Dirty hair, don't care. Clean hair, don't like it. Hi, everybody. Welcome in to session 4. Normally, I'm coming to you from home with session 4, but today we thought it would be better to do it from the office because we're gridding for part of class today. And it is a little bit easier. I'll lower that down just a little bit. It is a little bit easier to grid here because we've got the camera set up, and you know, when I'm at home I'm trying to do it, but I'm kind of sideways and it gets weird. So anyway, I don't like my hair when it's clean. My hair is very clean today, and I like my hair when it's dirty. It's probably really strange. People are probably the opposite, but anyway, it's really nice to see you. Thank you. So welcome in. I have, as per usual, I have so much to cover today that I've been spending today going, this is kind of like 3 classes in one. But somehow it always happens. I have 4 pages of notes to get through in my magic notebook. I was looking through this the other day. I'm like, who's ever going to, like, one day somebody's going to unearth these notebooks from class, and they probably won't even be able to make sense of my notes anyway. But yeah, I know.
Like the crooked stuff off to the side. My notebook's the same.
There's weird shit. I mean, and my handwriting's not, you know, coherent and stuff. It's not, this isn't, I guess it's just for internal purposes, right? So anyway, I've got a lot to cover. We'll get through as much as we can. The first half of class, is anybody new, by the way? I don't think anybody's new tonight, but if you are new to session 4, like this is your first one, it is kind of one of our favorite classes this year because the first half of it is crafting, which today is gridding, and then the second half of class is rabbit hole, and that's a ask me anything, take me anywhere, I'll go for the ride experience where we just get to talk about really what's ever on your mind, and it's no holds barred. I don't always have answers for everything. I mean, I'm a smart person and I'm very experienced. I don't know everything. So, and I try to be honest about that. If you're asking me about something, I might just go, you know what, I have no clue. Or here's my best guess based on, you know, my training and my travels and my experiences. So we're really excited to bring you the rabbit hole once again. I'm just checking the feed because I see you guys talking to each other. If anybody's having a hard time today, I just want to tell you, I see you. I do spend, I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you, I do spend the first half of all of our classes, me personally, really focused on the camera because there's so much good content that I want to get through, and then the second half of class, I really just focus on the feed. So if you ask something during the first 90 minutes and I don't respond, I'm not ignoring you. I'm not, you know, having a mental health emergency. I'm just trying to convey as much information as I can in a coherent way. Over the years, students have told me they prefer that the first half is kind of more focused on nuts and bolts and content in that way, and then the second half of class is more the conversation. So anyway, but Karen and Alexis are both here in the feed.
Hi.
They, as always, thank you both. Thank you. And so they will be there to answer any like technical questions that you have, and then anything else. I will be there to hold space and respond at the second half. Okay, so are you ready for this? I don't see my bell. Here, I'm going to ring this one.
Oh, you know what? I think your bell got moved when we were looking. Remember we had that meeting?
That's like the bell they have at the Winchell's near my house. Ding, ding, ding. Like, hey, donut lady, come give me a donut. Anyway, ding, ding, ding. It's all right. I gave you a bell. It's a bell.
It's actually mine.
It's not like, well, in that case, we should be worried about it.
No, it's okay.
Rachel knows where it is. Rachel is the keeper of all things. Okay. So anyway, we will begin right at the beginning. I want to, let me explain what the 3 kind of sections of today's class are. And this is just how I've devised it, because based on what you guys are looking for from tonight's experience. So we are going to be doing the, the gridding, which is what came with your tools. This is a uniquely Brazilian set of stones. That's because Brazil is our country that we're focused on. And because we're talking about Brazil, we're also going to talk about Lemuria and Atlantis tonight. And we haven't talked about Lemuria and Atlantis in a minute. I found a really interesting website that I want to read to you a little bit from. And then I'm also going to read to you a little bit from my book because this, Crystal Lore, Legends and Myths was my crystal history book that came out about, was it 4 years ago now? Which is crazy. but it's still kind of my best thinking on the subject. You know what I mean? So rather than just like regurgitating it to you in some other form, if you already have Crystal Allure and you've read it, then you've read that section. But if you don't have it, or you haven't read it, or it's been a long time and you forgot, tonight will be a good refresher. And then the third part of tonight's class is recentering on shamanism as this month's psychic and spiritual gift. And I actually want to, with your permission, I want to start there, because it's an interesting way to move into our conversations around Lemurian Atlantis and ultimately to Brazil, and will connect us back to gridding, because a lot of the things I'm going to talk about tonight about the energetic field, the human biofield, also called the luminous field, has to do with the way that energy moves around our human bodies, and it actually connects to grids, because what you're doing with a grid is basically harnessing the field and focusing energy with a specific intention and specific crystals for a specific purpose, right? That's what gridding is. And so gridding is becoming more common in, the topic of gridding is becoming more common in shamanic circles, because of the fact that really it's an acknowledgement that there is a biofield, that we can manipulate it, right? We can gather energy. And basically when you activate a grid, you are activating a web of light between certain points that you've defined. And depending on how you set up your grid, it actually can end up looking like a Merkaba or a Metatron's cube or a toroidal field. So anyway, I'm going to try to make as much sense as I can. If there are questions along the way, let Alexis and Karen know, and I'll try to stop and clarify things. I think I'm pretty good at taking complex spiritual topics and communicating them in as simple terms as is possible to do. But we are talking about some complex stuff tonight, and if you're brand new to any of this, I just want to make sure that you feel absolutely able to follow and understand. Does that make sense? So we're going to dive right in. If you see me looking at my notes a lot, it's just because this week's class is kind of dense. Not like dense in a boring way, but it's just there's a lot of moving parts, and so I want to make sure I cover everything that I intended to cover with you before our time together is done. So I'm going to dive right in. I do want to remind you we are still in a new moon eclipse portal, not for much longer. Those of you who were there last night, it was wonderful to have you with our community, our broader community, for the new moon solar eclipse Diwali ceremony. I've got my Molly bracelet on. Zoe and I put ours on, I put mine on early, and she put hers on right after the ceremony. Mm. So it's kind of fun to incorporate those rituals and traditions with your friends and family. My recommendation, though, is really stay focused with the energy. Be mindful again. Yesterday, like today, can feel kind of volatile. It can feel a little tense. It's a not very forgiving energy, this particular portal. But I thought we worked the energies really beautifully together last night. So I'm really grateful for you. I went to bed feeling like a happy, fulfilled soul, and I hope you did too. Okay, so we're going to come back and we're going to recenter on what it means to consider shamanism as a psychic or a spiritual gift. And I want to go macro, kind of bigger picture with you, and then we'll come back to shamanism in particular as a micro example. This year we set out, I think we've done a fairly good job, but we set out this year to give you an overview of 12 unique psychic and spiritual gifts. Now, most people think there's only 3: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. Most people, if you ask them, like, what are the psychic gifts, they'll say there's 3. And my intention this year in creating this curriculum, and our intention more generally as a team, was that we don't think it's quite that simple. We think there's other gifts that people have. I started the year off with discernment because my grandmother, who was a minister, as I've told you many times, always said that was the most important gift that one could have as a spiritual practitioner. So I think that's interesting too, right? Like, so I kind of was going back to lots of different traditions and pathways and lineages to think about how people in different parts of the world and different cultures think about psychic and intuitive gifts. So, but what I want to say is this: remember, if you're a very linear, cut and dry thinker, and I kind of am too, right? Like, I'm trained as a scientist, so I'm trained to think in compartments. This can drive you crazy Because if you see some of clairsentience, for example, in shamanism, you might be going, but wait a minute, those were 2 different months. Why are we talking about this again, right? What I have to remind you when we talk about this year's curriculum is everything bleeds into everything. I was saying to Alexis and Tara earlier, this year there might be a strawberry in your blueberry pie, and there might be a blueberry in your blackberry pie. Okay.
You said blackberry and cherry pie. There was never a strawberry.
Oh no, it was blackberry and cherry pie.
I'm just being a brat. Sorry.
There's always one in every class like her.
I'm the linear.
Excuse me, you didn't say strawberry, you said cherry. And then I would turn and go, everyone thank Alexis for her accuracy. And in my mind, I'm just like, all right, I see you little shitterman over there. Anyway, but she's right. I did actually say cherry in your blackberry pie. But you know what I mean, right? So if you're the kind of person who's like really needs your blackberries not to have any cherries in them, this year's curriculum is probably driving you mad. Having said that, nothing is clean in spirituality. I mean, this entire universe, when you back up the truck, right? What you have to recognize is there is only one energy in this entire cosmos. And I hope we get into some of the super juice aspects of this when we turn to rabbit hole. I mean, I don't decide what we talk about, you do, but man, I would love to talk about this. There was even a time when there was no male or female. We're kind of moving back toward that now, in my opinion. I thought that in the 70s and 80s growing up, when people really started to talk about bisexuality, which is how I identify. And I remember thinking, this is really freeing, right? Like, I don't have to be in a relationship with a man or a woman to be normal, right? And that, you might think, well, that's crazy that seems so earth-shattering at the time. But it did, because for someone like me who felt attraction for both sexes, I could never kind of figure out how I was supposed to find myself in a binary system, right? So anyway, I bring that up because you want to go bigger picture than that. Then you want to talk about the fact that there was a time when there was no male or female. And then there was a time when we became divided in that way, physically. And that's really where the origin story of the Christian Bible begins, right? Adam and Eve and all of that. I don't want to get into that tonight because that's a weird narrative and it's not my favorite part of the Christian cosmology, and it's not even relevant to tonight's conversation. But because I'm not sure I like the idea that I came from somebody's rib. Whatever. It's also metaphoric, right? But anyway, there was a time when we were truly in one unified field of consciousness. I wasn't a female, or what we now call a cis female, right? I wasn't defined by having certain biological bits and pieces. And the division of humanity created some interesting dynamics, right? If you want to, sometimes I think, it's a weird thing to say, but sometimes I think about how the divine views us, right? Like if you had a unified consciousness in a population, right, where everybody was the same, and you wanted to make it interesting, right, you would create divisions and differences and then see how that plays out. How do these folks deal with now half of them are this and the other half are that? How does that work, right? And if you're different, then what does that mean if you don't fit into those categories? But I do believe that we come from a single source of energy, and we give that single source of energy different names, right, depending on where you grow up and what you're exposed to. And in my particular opinion, there is no right or wrong. But that's me. You don't have to believe that that's true. There's plenty of people in this world who would say that I'm crazy for saying that, but I don't think that any spiritual path is wrong per se. I think that there are some that have attributes that appeal to some people more than others, right? Now, I also want to say, in trying not to overcomplicate this, but totally complicating it, I do believe there's always been one perceptual difference in the universe, and that is there has always been a polarity between light and darkness, right? And then there was light, right? The Big Bang, right? some light emerged from darkness. I find it enjoyable to have friends who are physicists because they're fun to talk to, especially if they're open-minded and will kind of go for the ride with me. Not all of them will, but my one friend who's a physicist always reminds me, and it's such a cool conversation when we get to have it. It always reminds me of Athena. 90 to 95% of the energy in this universe is what's known as dark matter. It's just pure void. What we think of energy and our cosmos and the multiverses and all of that, humanity, the planets, the solar system, is the totality of it, not just our solar system, makes up less than 5%, 5 to 10% of all energy in the entire multi-cosmos. Do you ever start to think about that? Like when your problems start to seem really, really big, remember that you are like a flea on the dog of the universe that is only 5% of the actual universe. Like, and not to say that we should minimize our problems and challenges, but like sometimes when I feel like life is overwhelming, it helps me to remember how small I am. We are just a tiny speck that's only here for a millisecond, right? And taking up very little space. So it's important to remember that most of the universe is consists of this dark matter. It's undefinable, it's unknowable, and it may not ever be explored in the time that you and I mean, most of it will never be explored in the time that you and I are here. Even the lives of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, right? So I go big picture first before I bring you back down to say, first of all, most of what we talk about when we talk about the world of psychic gifts, I can't prove it, you can't prove it. Most of what we hypothesize about and most of our conjecture is based on our lived experience, what we've learned from teachers and other resources that we've availed ourselves of. But we really don't know. Everything I even am telling you tonight is just my best guess based on what I know and things that I've observed in my own experience. But I don't own truth, right? So, and like I said, part of what's fun for life about me is knowing that, or for me, is knowing that I have a certain number of decades in which to discover as much as I can before I go home. So I find myself just kind of hoarding information or trying to accumulate as much wisdom as I can in the time that I have, because I do think we port that wisdom through timelines. So I do think that everything I learn in this lifetime at some point will serve me in the future. So I must be preparing for something, right? But I don't know what that is. So I would like for you just to be on this journey with me of allowing these gifts to be broadly defined, recognizing that there's overlap between them. And the reason that I put shamanism on the board, if you will, as a psychic gift is that I do think it is a gift of living a life. Let's see what you think of this. Try this on like a costume, okay? This mindset. I see myself as someone who lives my life in two worlds. I live here, I have a job, I go to sleep, I wake up, I have to eat, I have to go to the bathroom, I wear clothes. I try as much as I can to like behave like a normal human. I look at other humans to see what normal people do, because sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be, okay, that's what a normal human does, right? I live in that world. But I also live in another world. And that world is the world of spirit. And that world is a world of ancestors and spirit guides and light beings and teachers from other dimensions. And I have tools that I can work with at my fingertips to be able to navigate those two worlds. I also feel like that isn't just something that I've decided, that's something that has also been impressed upon me since I was a young person, right? And to this day, like people who don't even know who I am or what I do will ask me to do certain things, to help them navigate certain things. And it's like, how do they know to ask me to do that, right? I was thinking this morning on my drive in, the song came on the radio on my SoundCloud that was playing when I was driving my dad to the hospital the day my mom died. I knew I only had 10 or 15 minutes to get him there. To be able to say goodbye. And this song by Liquid Bloom came on SoundCloud, and it's the Fire Gathering song that I posted today. And I remember thinking that came on. I didn't turn that on. It just came on out of nowhere, and it's an invocation. It's a blessing. It's a calling upon, you know, Great Spirit and the gifts and the dimensions and all these things. And I was thinking, like, in that moment, I knew I was standing between my mom, who had already partly crossed, right? She wasn't fully in this world anymore, and my dad, who doesn't really believe in any of this, but needs me to be able to hold that space so that he has time to say goodbye to her. So I'm talking to my mom and asking her to hold on, and knowing that she's seeing me trying to get my dad there, and this song is playing in the background. And I thought, these are the moments where, these are incredibly human moments, but I identified shamanically with that experience. And I remember telling my dad, who taught me how to drive, I remember looking at him and saying, I will not remember this drive to this hospital. I will not remember this. I'm going to do my best to obey all traffic laws. Just don't judge me and hold on. Because I don't even know really where I am right now. I'm not quite in the car, but I'm aware that I'm driving, right? So anyway, I share all this with you because this is not just a psychic gift. This is a way of living and being in the world. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because it brings meaning to my life. If I really thought that Burger King over there and this sitting at this desk doing this right now and going home and cooking dinner, and that's all there was to everything, and then when I died it was just over, and like I would find that quite depressing and discouraging. I don't like the idea that reality is very limited in that way, right? What gives me hope and optimism, and what gets me excited to get out of bed in the morning, is there's a serendipity and a magic to all of this that we're not in control of. And so we're doing all the mundane things that we have to do, and raising our families and taking care of people and working and contributing to society. But there's so much more going on behind the scenes, and we don't get to control it. We just get to experience it. And sometimes we get to peek into magic. And those moments are what I live for, right? So, and now my grandmother would say she did the same thing I'm doing. Both of my grandmothers were shaman in a way. On my dad's side, she called herself a medicine person, right? So my grandmother in Crete was the one who you would go to. People traveled from all over to see her. And she would make you salves or teas or tinctures, or she would diagnose you. She would run, her hands through your energy field, and she would diagnose things for you. My mom's mother was a minister. They both did this work. You know, my grandmother, the minister, would go to people's houses when they were dying and say their last scriptures with them and all of that. That's shamanic, but she didn't call herself a shaman. My grandmother in Greece was a medicine person. She was doing the same thing. She was listening to she would call them her helpers. She was listening to her spirit helpers and having them diagnose people and treat them with different things, but she didn't call herself a shaman, right? She called herself at best, what I've heard is medicine woman, right? And she didn't even like to name it. She just said it was her gift, her work, you know? So I just want to share all of that with you because it isn't neat and clean, it isn't cut and dry, and it doesn't fit into boxes and categories. And so you have to figure out how you want to describe what you do. But I will tell you this, if you're interested in all of this, there are ways to cultivate it. I have a list tonight of 6 or 7 practical exercises that I'm going to go through with you to help you cultivate this gift if it is something that you want to develop. And then at the end of the month, if you're like, meh, that was interesting to hear about, but I mean, it's like not my jam. No harm, no foul, right? I did my job, which is to expose you to some of this wisdom at a high level. And then if it resonates with you and you incorporate it, great. And if you're just going to move on because you're happy being clairvoyant and you don't really want all this other stuff, whatever it is for you, that you know, it won't hurt my feelings. My intention this year was to give you a bigger picture exposure to all of these things. Okay, so the way of the shaman is a path. It's a path. It is a way you live. It's not a way you think. And it's not, Tara was saying this earlier, and she's so right. You know, it's not just, oh, you half an hour a day and now you're a shaman or whatever, because true shamanic practitioners would tell you this never shuts off. It doesn't go away. It's how you raise your kids. It's how you cook your food. It's how you put on your clothes in the morning and take off your clothes at night. It's how you prepare for sleep. It's how you create sacred space, and it's how you help people through major transitions in their lives. So it's a pathway. It's a practice. It's not even necessarily a gift. Although, and most people who practice it, including me, would look at you sideways when you say it's a gift, because it's been really hard for most of us who do it. Most of us feel like we've had an initiation, and usually that initiation, and it was for me, involves loss of some kind. I've told you this before. When I lost my vision, that was what most of my teachers identified as an initiation. And then you come back with stronger senses, which happened to me too, but it's nobody really wants. So when people say, oh, I really want to be a shaman or whatever, most people look at them and go, I didn't say that, she said that, because it's not really something that you would ask for. It can be a very difficult path to walk. And we talked too about the fact that the word shaman, right, the Tongan word shaman just means one who sees. Just like the word witch just means wise person, wise one. You know, I mean, these words don't mean anything except for the meaning that we attribute to them. So when people get all wrapped around the axle because one person used it and why are you using it and I should be using it but you can't use it, it's kind of insane, because it's all of these words, if they have any meaning that's charged to people, it's because of the connotations. It's not because of the true meaning, right? So however you identify, I think we're all talking the same language, you know what I mean? And I think, and it may have to do with your physical lineage and it may not have to do with your physical lineage. Yeah. Okay. So the path of power, as some people call it for shamanism, really what it is about having direct contact with the spiritual world, or communion, if you will, with those who are not in human physical form. And that can include spirits of plants, that can include animal spirits, right? So it isn't just about seeing dead people and ghosts. It's also about, in fact, most of shamanic practice is about communing with the natural world and seeing the natural world as alive and powerful and vibrating with its own set of frequencies that can be very healing to humans if we're willing to, you know, believe that that's true. Also, one of the main hallmarks, at least for me, of shamanism as a gift, if you will, I'm going to call it for the rest of tonight a path or a practice, is that you help people see that the stories that they've told about themselves forever and that have been told about them are just stories. And anytime they want, they can step out of that story. We become so attached to our stories that we start to, our identity becomes melded with them. So when you meet someone and they say, tell me about yourself, and you go, well, I'm 49. It's like, okay. People growing up and saying, Athena's just, I remember my mom saying things like, she talks too much, or she's too serious, or she's, always has her face in a book, or, whatever. These stories that people make up about us, it's not necessarily true. And then we start to take on those stories like, that's me, always got my face in a book, or I'm too serious, I take things too seriously, or I'm too quiet, or I'm too loud. What shaman try to do is remind people that everything you know about yourself is a story. And that can be really disconcerting to some people, because some of us want to believe that the stories are who we are, right? Even stories that are positive, like I'm a teacher, but that's a story, right? That's been developed because of things that I do and my hobbies and what I enjoyed spending my time doing, and how I make a living, right? But it's not necessarily the sum of who I am. So part of shamanism is also helping people release attachments to old stories that not only don't make sense, but don't serve them anymore and are absolutely not accurate. I mean, everything is a story. When you leave this planet, none of those stories will remain true. You will always be someone's mother, but that will no longer be the only part of your identity. I remember having to serve as a shaman for my siblings when my mom died, because both of them, especially my sister, was sort of like, how is it that mom isn't like here and around us all the time and we can't feel her? Like, she's our mom. And I remember looking at her and saying, she's not just our mom. And P.S., she had another child that she lost between me and my brother. She's over there with that soul. And she's had how many other lifetimes where she wasn't our mom? So to expect that she's just going to be hanging around in the closet waiting to play with us from the spirit side because she was our mom, you're pinning her to a story that's no longer accurate for her. And as painful as that may be, we also have to liberate her to be a fuller expression of her soul's broader truth than just our reality and our experience, right, with who we knew her to be. So we are not our stories, and a shaman can help you identify that. Part of getting out of your story is recognizing that you are the universe. You're not just in the universe. You are expansive and multifaceted and multidimensional, and you exist in different timelines right now, doing other things that you're not consciously aware of because your brain can't handle that. It would explode. But you are a lot of other things. And that's why sometimes when you meet people and it's a new relationship, we enjoy that, because have you had that experience where like you get into a new relationship or a new friendship and it's almost like an opportunity to get outside your story? They may not know who you are. Sometimes it's refreshing to me because most people in the world know who I am and what I do because we've been doing this for a really long time. But sometimes when I meet people, they're like, oh, what's Sage Goddess? That's interesting. I'm always like, oh, this is fun. I have no idea what Sage Goddess is. And I kind of play with like, how would I describe it to someone who's never heard of it before? And it liberates even me to say, oh, that's kind of cool that you don't know. Then just forget about it and let's get to know each other without all of that backstory, right? The other hallmark, a couple of other hallmarks of shamanism that I'll just go through really quickly. First of all, we're really good at tracking energy, and I want to explain what that means. Shaman track energy like hunters track animals, right? Instead of tracking like footsteps or scent, right, we track energy. So we're really good at extending out energetic tentacles to kind of monitor and observe situations. One of my shamanic teachers says that she does it by sending crow medicine. She'll send a crow. So if she's really busy, if she needs to connect with one of her clients, she'll send a crow to them. Either to bring information to them or to gather information to them. So when we were practicing together, she would say, I'll send a crow to you, you send me what you need, I'll send the crow back with what you need. So we don't actually have to communicate. That's kind of a form of tracking. Now you have to do this with a certain amount of ethical foundation because you don't want to just be tracking everybody. And first of all, that's exhausting. That's not your work. But it is possible for a shaman to track people, to track their stories, to track their energy, to track their healing. And that's how, as a shaman, sometimes people will perceive you as being in multiple places at once. You really aren't necessarily physically in multiple places at once, but your energy can be in multiple places at once. And that's an interesting exercise too. And so you can send your kids off to school, maintain a track on them, maintain a track on your partner, maintain a track on your clients, and just kind of be balancing all of that and managing it, and not even on a conscious level. And becoming aware of your ability to do that is very powerful. It's an incredible gift, and it allows you to be much more expansive in your connections with people without having to do additional work, as we see it, right? This gift, or this capacity to track, dates us back, most of us agree, to Lemuria and Atlantis, when we had multiple ways of knowing and being and experiencing time, before we were so hardened into what we call third dimension. So that's when we do tracking, and when we work on this multi-dimensional level of awareness and contact, we're really kind of activating some old Lemurian and Atlantean gifts. The other difference the other kind of hallmark of shamanism, in my experience, is shaman make the distinction between information and knowledge. And one of the most famous examples in shamanism is, water. So water is H2O, right? That is the chemical composition of water, hydrogen and oxygen. But at the same time, what a shaman would say is what you really need to know about water is not what molecules it's made of. You need to know how to make it rain. So that when there isn't enough water, you know how to manipulate energy in the environment and work with nature in order to produce rain. So you don't need to know what it's made of, you just need to know how to make it happen, or how to bring it to places that don't have it. And that's the difference. So where a lot of people in our culture tend to privilege and prize information, right? That's what we get grades on in school, and because in school they ask you what the chemical composition of water is, you better know. But then if you were in a shamanic school, they would not be interested in knowing what the molecular composition is. They would be interested in knowing, are you able to bring rain if there's a drought, right? And also the ability to call on spirit helpers and spirit allies, and recognizing that you don't do any magical or spiritual work on your own. That's also kind of a hallmark of shamanism. In Christianity and other traditions, like in Christianity, they call upon the Holy Spirit, right, when they need a spirit ally, or more power for their prayers, for example, or I always struggle with it's not ritual, it's not ceremony either, but Christians don't like those words, but anyway, you know what I mean. So they'll call upon the Holy Spirit. In shamanism, we have a broader a range of possible spirit allies to call upon. Almost an infinite and endless range of spirit allies to call upon. And people call those energies by different names. They're helpers. That's what my grandmother called them. It's their assistants in the spirit world who bring knowledge, who help to transform states of consciousness, who help them track energies that are beyond their ability to track as a human. Now, the final kind of hallmark of shamanism is this idea that you are not just a body. This is you, and this is you on shamanism. Okay? So you are not just a body. You have this entire field around you at all times, and that field is a blessing and a challenge. If you don't even know you have it, then you're not aware of how it's influenced, and you're not aware of the importance of your what we call personal space in Western culture, right? We know we don't want people that we don't know sitting on our laps and touching us and holding our hands. It makes us uncomfortable. We just don't know why we feel that way. Why it's okay for a child to curl up on us and we have that's not a violation, but somebody whose energy we're not familiar with, we wouldn't want them snuggled up with us in bed at night. Not all the time. Depends on, where you're at in your life. But most of us are not interested in that at this particular moment. So what you have to know is this field is shaped like this, right? It's the Merkaba, right, which is in ancient times, this is how we used to move, right? We would activate this energy field, and then and within that we could transport between dimensions and geographical locations. But this, and again, if you have questions, just remember to hold them till the second half, because I don't want you to feel like I'm not seeing your questions, unless you want Karen and Alexis to respond to them, and then that's different. But just write it down so you don't forget. The way that energy moves, however, is this donut-shaped toroidal field. Okay, so this is you in the middle, and this is your field. And it is spinning around you all the time. And in shamanism, we become really consciously aware of the interplay of that field around each of us, and the fact that Alexis is sitting a few feet away from me, and we're close enough where our fields are connected. I could take that a step further and say I can also communicate, because we're sitting next to each other, I could communicate with her without talking to her by sending information through the fields. I can also feel her. Like if she was to all of a sudden get bad news or, feel upset or something, if I'm attuned into her and I'm sensitive enough, I can feel that energy happening without her telling me anything, right? It's the reason why, as a teacher, I could always kind of track my students. I could tell who was paying attention, who wasn't. You know what I mean? I could kind of see what was happening in the room. We call it reading the room in Western culture, but really all it is tracking energy, right? Mm-hmm. Now, some people consciously don't want to do that. This is not their calling. They don't want to feel your emotions or track you. They wish that you would just actually not be anywhere in their field, right? And that's okay too, right? Again, this is not something that everybody is designed to do, wants to do. I think most people are capable of doing it, but to the extent that they want to do it, depends. But this field is always moving. It will move forever. You take this field with you. That's why when you see a cadaver, right, it doesn't really look like the person, because everything everything that's animated and alive about you is actually your field. And when your field leaves this suit that you're wearing, the suit doesn't look the same. Do you know what I mean? That's why when you see, you know, a dead body, it's like, you know, seeing my mom, it was like, yeah, she's gone. I mean, her field is with her. Her field isn't in that body. And that's, for me, a source of comfort, right? She still exists. This doesn't get born and this doesn't die. This comes into a body when two people have sex. This comes into a body. And then when the clock runs out, this leaves the body. How's that for a very interesting biology lesson? But it's really true. Everything about you that's dynamic and alive and empowered and resonating and radiating and vibrating will leave with you. So there's no beginning and there's no end to that field. That field just moves from timeline to timeline and container to container, but you are a never-ending field of consciousness, right? So and death is a terrible thing, but it's also proof of how true that statement actually is. You know, you can use, there's no denying it. So let me see. Now, all cultures, traditions acknowledge everything that I've just told you in one way or another. They all will recognize it. They call it by different names. They describe it in different ways. But almost every culture and tradition that has some sort of spiritual foundation to it acknowledges everything that I've just told you. That there is an eternal nature to the spirit. Now, they may not talk about reincarnation, and that's what I'm saying. You can get into specifics, and there can be some disagreement. Well, death is, for me, Londa, I agree with you, but for me, death is not a beginning, it's a continuation. It is an evolution. It is the completion of the task at hand here in this dimensional reality. So I'm here with a contract to do certain things, to interact with certain people. I was here to make a couple of people here while I was here, right? I am fulfilling the terms of my contract. When I'm done with that contract, I evolve to the next plane of dimensional experience. So it's an evolution, it's an extension and a continuation. And that's why I don't see death. I mean, we somehow we have created, you know, these mythologies about what life and death really are, because somehow we have to explain that there's a body that we have to put in a container somewhere and get rid of, right? So we have to kind of have an explanation for that. But the mystery part of it, where we go and what happens to the essence of who we are, that's where it gets exciting, right? Okay, so I want to give you right now some practical tips. Remember, this will all be in your notes, so I would just love it if you just listened rather than trying to scramble and take notes or whatever, unless you want to take your own notes, but this will be in the notes for you. Here's some of these are kind of basic and very practical, but I do like to give you practical tips, and you've asked for them this year, so I'm kind of meeting you where you are. These are some pretty basic practical tips to cultivate this gift if you have it and want to build on it, or if you would like to have it but you don't feel like you're there yet. Does that make sense? So number one is, remember that your entire energetic field is light. In fact, there's really nothing else to you besides light and vibration and sound. That's all we are. We are that put into this thing. But at your core essence is light, vibration, and sound. And so by working with light and by working with sound, this is an exercise that can help you to cultivate more of your spiritual, your shamanic gifts. We are composed of light, all living food, which is why it's so important that you eat living food and not dead food. You shouldn't overcook your food. My friend Yasmin has been a really great teacher of all of this for me over the last couple of years, and has gotten me much more focused on preparing my own food, not eating packaged and processed foods. There's no light in those foods. And so then we wonder why we feel kind of dead when we're eating them, and it's like, well, they're dead. So you want to eat vibrational, healthy food. So that's one tip, actually, is the more you fill your body and your energy field with light, and physical light too, Most shaman I know agree you should try to spend at least 15 minutes a day experiencing direct sunlight, ideally without sunscreen. Now, if it's 120 degrees Fahrenheit where you live, sitting outside for 15 minutes and trying to expose yourself to that could yield a really wicked sunburn. So I'm not necessarily saying everybody, every condition, everywhere, but without barrier, your skin, which is the largest organ in your body, needs to receive light in order to be fueled by it. And most of my friends actually say they take it a step further and say you should try to look at, not directly at the sun, but to the side of the sun, so you're actually receiving the light into your eyes. Because in shamanism, it's thought that the eyes are actually the windows of the soul. So the more light energy you take in through your skin, through your eyes, and through your food, the better you're going to feel. And then the opposite is true too. The more you eat dead foods and highly acidic foods and even, alcohol and things like that, it diminishes the amount of light in your field, which sometimes can feel good because the dead foods and the alcohol and all of that, they slow your vibrational rate. And so if you're vibing really high and you run anxious, you know what I mean? Like if you're somebody who tends to have anxiety, that can feel temporarily kind of good to slow the vibration down, but you got to watch that, because too much of that can actually lead to depression, to lead to you feeling not as alive and not as empowered and strong, right? And then, you're supposed to do that sun exposure either very early in the morning or at the end of the day, but the preference is early in the morning. So 5, 6, 7 a.m. My one friend who does it every single day never does it after 6 or 6:30 in the morning. So it's that morning light, which has the most intense capacity to bring vitamin D to your system, scientifically. The next one is called an orb meditation. Every shaman believes in orbs. They show up in your pictures. Sometimes you'll see them even when I'm teaching. Orbs are light transmissions, and they're real. And if you think about it, your energy field, if you slow down that toroidal field and you just look at it as a shape, it really is spherical. It's round. It's an orb around you. And so orbs are very powerful. A fun meditation to kind of practice these gifts is to try to learn to discern what your energy field feels like and to be conscious of what you fill it with. So you can imagine that outside of your body, 2 to 4 feet, you can imagine an orb of light. You can imagine it green or pink or white or whatever color, it doesn't really matter. And the exercise becomes to sense not your body and not the orb, but what's between you and the edge of the orb. How far out does it go? There's different ways you can do this. I like to do it with my pendulum. So you can run your pendulum over and it'll turn when you get to the edge of the orb. The flow of energy will start to change. And that will actually tell you, and I'm just asking the pendulum, am I still in my field? Still in the field? Still in the field? Can you see it? Still in the field? You see how it's shifting?
Mm-hmm.
I'm out of my field now. And then come back. That's the edge of my field.
Okay.
You want to try it? It's a fun exercise. It's a cool party trick, and it works on both sides. And it never fails. When I got to work with the Mitchell Hedges skull, which is the quartz skull that came from South America, and I got to work with it, my friend is friends with the keeper of that skull. First thing I did was take off my magician pendant, and I wanted to sense the orb. And that thing, when I got to the edge of the field, yeah, right?
It's about the same distance as ours was.
When I got to the edge of that thing's field, it was moving in all these crazy directions. And then when it got back to the coherence of its own field, was quite direct. Now, that exercise is for those of you who are like, no, but I want proof. I kind of feel like it's right there, but I want to be able to prove it. If you don't need proof, then you can kind of sense it in other ways, right? And start becoming really conscious of what's in that field on a daily basis. Make sure that you can keep that field spacious and clear. Be mindful of, I even look at myself and my bed and I try to keep my nightstand away a little bit. I don't want too much right in that 2-foot radius because it'll interrupt my sleep patterns. I find that when I'm managing that field and I'm very aware of it, I feel better. if I'm in a really crowded room, I get very overwhelmed very quickly. And it's especially because if there's somebody right in front of me and side to side. When we were leaving Stevie Nicks, it was like, I've never had that experience before. I've never been to a sold out concert at the Hollywood Bowl, and we were like cattle getting out of there. It was, people were just shoulder to shoulder, and it wasn't great energy, and I was just like, I kept just centering myself and going, I will survive this. I will absolutely survive this.
Honestly, it makes me uncomfortable even just thinking about it. As soon as you said it, I was like, ugh. I have to go to a concert on Saturday after our Olaf's retreat.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, I'm not.
Can't imagine going to a concert after Olaf's.
I know. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'll make it work. But yeah, I can, crowds.
People were pushing on our backs and stuff. You know what I mean? It's just like, ooh, I couldn't. It took me like 24 hours to recover from that. And even Zoe was like, wow, I'm really overwhelmed right now. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, hi Pisces. Right? It was a lot for her little toroidal field.
I want to jump in a Merkaba and get to the car.
We were trying to summon every fucking Merkaba in the universe, and they were not coming. And my Merkaba, known as my car, was really far away. So anyway, it was a shit show. But that's another exercise for you. The next one is, and by the way, what is between you and the edge of that field is your chi. It's your ki. It's your prana. It's your life force. So anything that's in that field is now interacting with yours. The next one is connecting with energy of the land. You know, we talked about psychocartography and astrocartography, and becoming more aware of the land where you are. What's the history of that land? Making contact with the earth each day. Stopping to take time in nature, which sounds really silly. Like we have so many sayings in our culture for this, like stop and smell the roses, right? How many times have you ever heard that? It sounds dumb as shit, right? Like stop and smell the roses. It's not really about stopping and smelling the roses. It's about remembering that nature is alive and vibrating, and it's a healer. Nature naturally transmutes low vibrations and frequencies, and everything in nature is light-filled. So when your own light energy sources are depleted, what you do is you go out in nature, you eat fresh foods and fresh, fruits and vegetables. You drink living, good quality water. You touch plants, right? There's a reason that our Creator made beautiful flowers, so you bring them indoors, and their scent is its own vibration, right? But we're supposed to be attracted to nature. We're supposed to bring nature, into communion with us. We're supposed to connect with the natural elements every single day, right? And so how consciously are you doing that? A lot of people, I always tell Zoe, I'm raising you to be a woman who buys herself flowers because most of us wait for people to give us flowers, but you should have flowers. And we in our house, we even pick fresh herbs, and we'll have just sprigs of rosemary in the kitchen. It's like, it doesn't have to be anything expensive, and it doesn't have to be anything you buy. It's just about bringing little bits of nature in. Remember that all plants go through their own life and death cycles, so it's beautiful to be able to appreciate things while they're alive and vibrant and enjoy them in your space too. Now there's a couple of quick exercises. Obviously connecting with your breath, which we don't have to talk about that. We've talked about breath a billion times. But we've talked about the vagus breath, right, which tones the vagus nerve in your body, which is the largest nerve in your central nervous system. It touches every organ in your body. And so the best breath you can use to enhance this gift, and you can teach it to other people too, and it will help them. You don't have to explain what it is, but you can just teach them that the exhale is twice as long as the inhale. So if you inhale for 2, you exhale for 4. If you inhale for 4, you exhale for 8. If you inhale for 8, you exhale for 16. Nobody does that. I like a nice 2-4. I like a nice 4-8. And if you can, hold the breath for the same number of beats as you inhale. So in for 2, hold for 2, out for 4, or in for 4, hold for 4, out for 8. If you can do that, some people with asthma and COPD struggle with that. So just an in for 2, out for 4 is a great way of doing it. Another exercise that one of my teachers taught me was, and I don't like this one, so I'm not going to do it. Don't ask me why, but touching my pulse freaks me out, and it has since I was very little. I do not like it.
I don't like it either.
Whoa.
I got uncomfortable. Did you see me? Yeah,
no, Alexis is over here like,
as soon as you even said it, oh, no. And that I feel like as soon as someone even mentions it, I can feel it in my arm.
Don't like it. But if you do like it, this is a great way. And it's not to count your pulse. It's not, this is not again, we're not at the doctor. This is not your annual physical. It's literally to connect to your life force, to feel the blood in your body. I'm not going to do it right now. I don't like to do it. It gives me the jeebs. I'm not doing it. But if you're into it, you can just sit there and pulse yourself all day long. I have other ways of feeling my life force that don't require me to do that.
It gives me the jeebs.
So it does. It gives me full jeebs. I'm not doing it. Now, the other thing you can do, though, and I do think this is good, and this will sound real weird to some of you, but touch your skin. You know, like literally just, I have a friend, and actually there are certain practitioners, Hindu practitioners, who teach that if you take your thumbs like this and your index fingers over them and you roll it over your thumb and bring it back and over the thumb and bring it back, that this is a way of calming. Apparently it calms the central nervous system. You don't want to do it the other way. You want to do it clockwise, just over the thumbs. But it's also a way of making contact with your skin, right? And then some shaman play with taste, because if you cultivate, but this is clairalience, right? So that's what I'm saying. There's slippage between the gifts, but they will deliberately taste things that are very sour, very salty, very sweet, extreme, in order to, because they say it stimulates, it like reorganizes and reconducts the flow of prana in the body. So, if you want to, you just put some salt on your tongue, and you'll see how it kind of like it rejuvenates your energy field. I forgot to tell you that in some of the shamanism traditions of Central and South America, they call orbs the bolas de luz, the balls of light. And actually, in almost every spiritual tradition, they have a separate name for it. If you kind of poke around a little bit, like Buddhists have names for it, almost every tradition does. Now, this next one could either freak you out or not. I think it's a great tip. It was taught to me by one of my teachers who learned it from his teacher. It makes me so tired, so I can only do it for a second, but man, it helps me fall asleep if I'm really like wired and I can't get to sleep. It's a way of using your eyeballs to clear your perceptual screen. Okay, so you close your eyes and you start by just, without opening your eyes, look left and look right. Look left and look right. Now, I have optic nerve damage because of my MS, so maybe that's why this makes me so tired. Both of my optic nerves are damaged. But anyway, if you have healthy optic nerves, it might not be as taxing for you. And then the real exercise is to look all the way around in a circle without opening your eyes. And try to do that 3 times. So look down, look to the left, look up, look to the right, look down, look to the left, look up, look to the right. And then seriously, it's, woo, I feel kind of high when I do that. And then, and not in the great way. And then if you want to play with it, you can do it counterclockwise. So then you can do the same thing and start right and go up and look to the left and look down and look to the right and look up and look to the left and look down. But it makes me tired and a little googly. Googly and jeebs.
I love it.
Some fun new vocabulary words for you. It's weird, right? That was as much as my optic nerves can tolerate, but it does clear your perceptual screen. Some people see it as a way of clearing the third eye. So if you have felt the need to clear and cleanse that particular energy center, that's a great tip and technique. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, this is another exercise too, shamanic exercise. And it actually is really more than a shamanic exercise. It's a way of activating clairvoyance. So the part of your brain that is responsible for your psychic visions is actually in the back of your head. And then your pineal gland is right between your third eye. So what you want to do, and you can try it both ways, right index finger on the third eye, left index finger on the visual cortex, or you can do it the other way around, and tap. And it will help to enhance your ability to see, not just with your human eyes, but with your spirit eye too. I find it, when I do it with my eyes closed, it's pretty cool. I find it activates my peripheral vision too and makes that more accurate. So These are just fun tricks. And then in shamanism, the one thing I wanted to say too, I wanted to go back to tracking real quick. In shamanism, the animal spirit ally for tracking is the jaguar. So one thing you can do in shamanic journey is to ask jaguar to come and be your ally and to teach you how to track energy. And most people I have talked to and worked with say it's a very successful exercise. So jaguar will come, and jaguar, because in the rainforests, jaguar is the animal with the most keen ability to track scent, but not just scent, can track energy without having any kind of scent or footprint. So the back of your head is literally, it's go all the way around from your pineal gland to the very back center of your head. So these should be parallel. See if you can find it. And then, like I said, for me it's more accurate if I close my eyes. Again, that's one I can't do for very long. I get tired and I start seeing orbs in my peripheral vision, and then I either have to journey a little bit or go to bed. So hopefully those are helpful for you as like higher level tips and techniques for how to track energy. And when we get to the rabbit hole part tonight, I will see if you have any questions about that. Now, as I said earlier, a lot of what we call shamanism really takes us back to what most of us believe is our Lemurian and Atlantean roots. So the legend, as far as we know, is that the formation of some sort of pre-human consciousness on this planet dates back to about 100,000 years ago. Now, I wanted to read to you from this website. I will post the link, so I'm just going to read to you for a second, but I thought that this particular doctor's perspective was interesting. And he cites a lot of geologists from the United States in his information about the origins of Lemuria and Atlantis. So I'm going to read to you for just a second from his webpage. So apparently the Lemurian continent is also known in his tradition as Kumari Kandam, and that it's a land that lays to the south of India and was submerged in the Indian Ocean. And it says, 2 American geologists, Mackenzie and Schlater, have clearly explained that Africa and South America were locked together as part of a primitive continent until about 200 million years ago. The present formations of India, Africa, Antarctica, South America, and Australia started breaking up due to natural upheavals and moving to different parts of the Earth at the rate of about 15,000 years per mile on average, and found their places in the continental forms where they are today. And so this movement of the Earth mass caused the present formation of the continent of India, which is where he's from. It says there is a general belief that both Lemuria and Kumari Kandam were one and the same. However, it's been established by Frank Joseph, Secretary for Ancient American Association, in his book, The Lost Civilization of Lemuria, the existence of a land called Lemuria, once one of the world's oldest civilizations, was in Indonesia. Hence, Lemuria and Kumari Kandam, which existed in the southern part of India, by his theory, are different lands. And he goes on to say, Mr. Joseph also established that because there were these letters from Eastern Islands that are about 100,000 years old. But they agree that there were natural forces, natural calamities that led to the fall of this particular land. So this island of Mu called Lemuria, which was located near Indonesia, people regularly moved out to Atlantis in the Mexican Sea and Kumari Kandam in South Tamil about 100,000 years ago due to a tsunami. From Atlantis, due to tsunami, to the Mu people who moved to South America and then became Aztecs and Incas. Those who moved to North America became Mexicans and what we call Indians today, indigenous populations. Those who moved to Africa became Sumerians, and those who moved from Africa to Arabia later became what we call the Jewish population today. It's very interesting, right? So it says, because of a calamity which took place in 9000 BC, a terrific destruction occurred and destroyed these other kingdoms, which all came together to form what is today India. So this is one of the first. It also talks about how the Rig Veda mentions some of these. And of course, the Rig Veda is the oldest spiritual text that we know of on the planet, and makes reference to a lot of these different realities. So it says, according to this particular researcher, who's an astronomy researcher, the cycle of time, referring to 24,000 human years, is mentioned in the Rig Veda in 50 different places. So 50,000 to 100,000 years is kind of what we're looking at in terms of the timeline of Lemuria and Atlantis. Now, if you go back to my book, the section that I wrote for you about Lemuria and Atlantis is on page 18 and forward. And what I basically suggested to you, 100,000 years ago, there was a galactic alliance of star beings who volunteered to launch a lineage of human inhabitants on our planet, on a new planet Earth. And Lemuria sat on and I don't know how new it was. I mean, this is just kind of like what I've gathered over the years of research and studying and listening to people and going to lectures. Lemuria sat on a giant landmass between what is now California and Australia, with the heart where Kauai sits today. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of people call Kauai the heart of Lemuria. Now, it's funny because I've been to every other Hawaiian island except Kauai. My friend John lives on Kauai. And I'm always like, I have to come visit you just so I can say I've been there. Lemurian beings came primarily from Sirius and the Pleiadian constellation, which are stars aligned to energies of love and peace, Christ consciousness. Sirius is the star that the wise men followed to find Christ after his birth. The Lemurian beings were taught to activate the human chakra system, right? Which connected them to the Earth's crystalline grid through the Earth Star chakra, and that's how they developed, an anchor or a tether to this planet. And so this section goes on. I won't read the whole thing to you. My understanding is that there was Lemuria first and then Atlantis. And that Atlantis, and part of this has come to me through ayahuasca, because I've asked many times to be shown. And what I'm telling you now is what she showed me. Again, what do I know? I could be wrong. We could all be wrong. There is some evidence that there was a sunken landmass there, though. So I don't think we're that far off. I think there's enough geological evidence at this point that we can say, yeah, there was something there. What was it? We don't know. And we do know that it sunk. So all these theories about the flood, because I do believe that the flood mentioned in the Bible has at least its story is connected. Because again, every major spiritual tradition talks about a flood that destroyed almost all of the inhabitants of the planet. Which is fascinating, isn't it? Now the whole Noah's Ark thing gets weird, and I don't think there were 2 of every animal like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like a storyteller who just couldn't accept the story as it is. So now I got to make it about 2 animals and stuff.
I saw a meme the other day that was like, whoever, if you think someone let 2 mosquitoes onto the ark, you are mistaken. You
know what? I don't like that person. Whoever made that choice, certain things shouldn't have made it to the ark. Anyway, so I don't think it's a cute story, and my mother-in-law bought the kids a little Noah's Ark musical thing when they were babies, and I was just rolled my eyes, but it's cute, bunch of animals on it. Anyway, but I mention all this because that story, that narrative, you find it in Islam, you find it in Christianity, you find it in the Rig Veda. It's interesting that there's this ubiquitous story about a massive flood. Not everybody has the animal part. So that's what we know to be true. So my understanding from everything I've learned and explored and been taught by plant teachers even, is that there was Lemuria. I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes version because I got to get moving on. We got a grid. There was Lemuria. It was, I don't believe we were male-female at that time. I think that was still before what I would call the fall, which is the separation of our species into male and female, which has created most of the problems that we experience even to this day. So I think we were one unified field of consciousness. I think the intention was to see if humans could live in love. Turns out we can't. So that civilization fell. That civilization did not have language, but it did have movement. It had wisdom. It had magic, right? But it wasn't spoken, written. There was no Mercury hadn't come yet. There was no Thoth. There was no hieroglyphics, right? That's all Atlantis. Atlantis came to put structure to civilization, to give language, to give order, to give technology, to engage more with the sky gods, right, which helped them build pyramids and all of these things. When Atlantis rose and then fell, Atlantis fell for different reasons. Atlantis fell, and a lot of us, I consider myself Atlantean, still has some karmic residue, because the fall of Atlantis was darkness. It became greed and power. Like, anytime you have structure and language and communication and division, you're going to have greed and power and war, right? I mean, that's just the origin of those energy streams. And so there were dark times in Atlantis, and people working without intention and not in ways that were helpful. And a lot of us have a lineage that we're still reconciling around that. However, we did some good stuff, right? I mean, to this day, I think my roots in my lineage roots in Egypt and Greece and Alexandria, where we can trace my family back to the libraries and the wisdom traditions and all that stuff. Like, I feel like that's a vestige of where my soul has been. When Atlantis fell, then there was a fleeing too. So what I wanted to show you in this graphic right here, I'm going to have you hold that up for them. So geographically, this is almost a joke to show it to you this way, because the universe the Earth didn't look like this.
I couldn't even find a map like this.
Yeah, I mean, Alexis had to make it, but I mean, yeah. We don't even really, we know and we don't know what the actual continental formations were at these times. So we look and we say, well, the Lemurians went to Mount Shasta in California and to Brazil and to Central and South America, but then the Atlanteans were closer to some of these regions, right? So then there's the reigning theory that the Mayans and the Inca and all of them were Atlantean. But then if you look at the geographical location and you look north and you look to the east, the Atlanteans are also said to have fled to Africa and to Tibet and to China, right? And to all of the regions to the east. So we're kind of working with a paradigm that says everything west is Lemuria and everything east is Atlantis. I don't think that's true. And here's why I think we find Lemurian lines on Tibetan quartz, for example. We find Lemurian lines on Veracruz amethyst, mm-hmm. right? On the eastern seaboard of Mexico, which is right there on your map. I don't think all the Lemurians went to Minas Gerais, Brazil. In other words, I think that's a really short-sighted, myopic kind of view of the events. I think it's far more complicated than that, but it helps us understand why, and it's the eternal question, why do I see Lemurian lines on other crystals that don't come from Brazil? And this is the explanation.
I think it's interesting too, because from what I was reading I think it was in your book that I read this, and that's why I chose kind of a rounded map, because if you look at it on a globe, Lemuria was between California and Australia. Mm-hmm. So people on the more eastern side of Lemuria would have been closer to this region right here. Yeah. So it's not likely that they would have, because it was huge.
It was huge.
Like, how would they have fled all the way across the land?
It was huge. I mean, the sunken continent is said to have taken up almost that entire space, to Alexis's point. It sunk both beneath the Pacific and the Indian Oceans. I mean, we're talking about two of the world's largest, bodies of water, and across that, right? And anyway, so now you can kind of see the greater origin story of these mysteries. So what I want to do for the remaining piece of our time together, and it's thought that these lines on Lemurian quartz, and I want to show you, the generators, yeah. She's over there hoarding them.
Well, this one is filled with inner children.
Oh, wow.
And then this one also has an inner child that I can see, and it's also just covered in like etchings and an inverted record. I was just looking at how cool they were.
No, they're rad. And we had these made for you. So Lemurian generators don't exist. We actually had to work with someone in Brazil who took Lemurian points and cut the base. I'd never had a Lemurian generator before. I mean, not a natural one. So I thought it was pretty cool that we were able to do these for you for the centerpiece of your grid. So what we're going to do is 2 quick exercises now. First of all, we're going to connect with our generator. So if you have your generator, I want you to take it in your left hand, cover it with your right hand. So it's between your sending and receiving pause. And I just want you to feel the energy of it for a moment, because if the legend is true, what happened is when that civilization fell, and it's a great question from Elsie, and we'll come back to that during the rabbit hole, but I do think that was probably the start of linear time. Again, I don't think we were male and female. I don't think that we had like a 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock timeline. I don't think that we had months like January and February. You know what I mean? I think we were in a very different reality, not bound by third dimension, or not bound by fourth dimension, which is time, and not bound by fifth dimension, which is space. So that would have made us at least 6-dimensional beings during that time. And then slowly, I think we were divided. We were tamed. We were put into tighter containers, maybe because we didn't play with our toys well. You know what I mean? So like now they're going to be stuck in time and space. Congratulations, funky humans who put 2 animals on a boat and call it a repopulation effort.
2 mosquitoes.
2 mosquitoes on a boat. Okay, so I just want you to connect with it. So the legend is that when Lemuria fell, and I would almost go so far as to say Atlantis probably did the same thing, because there wasn't communication, but there was knowledge, right? Not information, knowledge. They encoded that knowledge of those systems and those experiences and those timelines into the crystals, knowing that. In fact, my theory, and a lot of people's theory, is that Earth was actually chosen for these civilizations because of the proportion of silicon dioxide on the planet. Our planet is covered in quartz. It's on every continent and landmass on this planet. It's got different inclusions, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, but every single continent on our planet has always had this massive amount of silicon dioxide. What we know about silicon dioxide, what we know about quartz, is it's programmable. It has its own electromagnetic field. And you can even sense it and feel it from within the Earth. So if we can sense all of that as very muggle 3D human beings, imagine what our spiritual ancestors could do with more refined skills than we have today, right? So I just want you to commune with it for just a second and feel the relationship to this. If you have any Lemurian quartz in your collection, go and grab that if you don't have your tools, you know what I mean? Just so you can really take a moment just to be present with the energy. We're focusing on Lemurian, like I said, because of our connection to Brazil this month. But like I say, I've had plenty of Veracruz amethyst, Tibetan quartz. It's got the ridges and the lines. Who's to say those aren't wisdom lines, right? And they call this the stairway to heaven. And good Lemurians, which these are all good Lemurians, you will feel, right? And most Lemurians have alternating ridge lines. So you'll have one side that's ridgy and another side that's smooth-ish, and then it gets ridgy, and then it gets smooth. They are typically 6-sided because quartz is a hexagonal, trigonal material, right? So you're going to have 6 sides, alternating sides. You're going to have 3 ridgy sides. So I think the best way for us to begin this process is I want you to just close your eyes and you can do it either way. Your left hand is your receiving hand, so it might be easier for you to decode using your left hand or finger. And I don't think it really matters which finger. Most of my friends feel like their index finger is their psychic finger, but some people feel more powerfully with their thumb. So whatever feels good to you. And there's 2 ways of doing this. You can run your finger down, but the lines, I've always been taught the lines are encoded horizontally. So what you want to do is start at the very top of your piece of Lemurian and go, I know we read left to right in English, but other languages like, Arabic, you read right to left. I've always been taught to read Lemurian lines right to left, for whatever that's worth. So you start at the right side at the very top and you run your finger across. And see what comes to you. Again, if you're clairvoyant, you might see something. If you're clairsentient, you might feel something. If you're clairaudient, you might hear something. Just have a deeper sense of knowing. And they say that Lemurian quartz chooses you. So even if, obviously we chose a piece for you when sending you your tools, but many people would say it was chosen for you already, right? So just running your finger across. And you want to do it on all of the sides that have the lines. And I rotate clockwise, but again, you're reading right to left. And you can even ask for the transmission, you know what I mean? It may not be a conscious knowing, it could just be a download or a transmission that you're getting through the crystal that's meant to be your wisdom. There to go. That's interesting. I keep hearing peace, creating peace, keeping peace, peace. That's what's coming to me from this piece. This piece is about peace. Yeah. Okay. Did you feel that? Now, for the grading part of our exercise tonight, we are going to place the generator in the middle of our grid. And if you notice, we gave you on the grid is a Metatron's cube. What I want to tell you about gridding, because we've talked about gridding so many times, and I don't like to be redundant in my teaching, but what I want to tell you about gridding is that basically you are activating those lines when you grid. And a lot of people do, and I do it with you all the time too, 4 stone grids, right? North, south, east, west. So you're basically activating elemental lines when you do that. When you add additional crystals, when you have 6 points in your grid, and you connect them, you activate the grid the way we do, you're basically drawing the Metatron's cube, which is kind of cool. And then if you're a visual person like me, what you can actually do is start to grid a little bit differently. You can actually start to grid not just the macro lines, the big 6 connectors, but you can actually grid those micro lines inside too. Mm-hmm. And so back and forth and back and forth. It's almost like what was that tool? My mom got me one for Christmas, a spirograph. You're basically like spirographing, you know what I mean?
I love spirographing. I haven't done that in forever.
It's real fun. Yeah, I bought one for the kids. They hated it, but I used it.
It'd be relaxing, I feel like.
It is kind of relaxing.
I'm going to order one on Amazon.
You should.
Yeah. As soon as I'm done holding it.
As soon as you get that. But you're spirographing, right? You're basically, and it's real what you're doing. You can't see it because you can't see the energy, but none of us can. But you are actually creating this. And that's why it's important to deactivate a grid. Because if you activate this field and then you start taking crystals out of it, those crystals have been programmed now to work synergistically and energetically with the other crystals in that formation, right? So they're all bound up in this energy field. And so it's important to deactivate a grid as accurately as you can by literally going counterclockwise over the same macro and micro lines. You guys all with me still? I feel like I'm being really complicated, but I also feel like it's kind of clear.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you have questions, you can let us know.
I think once you actually start doing the gridding, it might help
so
a little bit too. Do you want me to switch this over for you?
Yeah. Let's see. So I'm going to turn this toward you.
I'm going to hold on to this generator. Oh, wait.
I need that.
I'm going to hold on to this.
This is not my generator. This one's hot for me. It was hot in my hand. Okay, so the other stones in your collection that we have given you, you got Dumortierite and quartz. These are all from Brazil, by the way. Dumortierite is a form of blue quartz. It's the stone of patience, which is not my strong suit, so I'm always working with Dumortierite. And these 4 are meant to go at the 4 inner circles. You see right here, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the way I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next one we gave you was Super 7. So that one I'm going to put right here. Super 7 again is a mixture of the 7 major healing minerals. And that includes amethyst, clear quartz, smoky quartz, cacoxenite, rutile, goethite, and lepidocrosite. Then golden healer, which, I love the legends about golden healer, that it was actually the main healing stone used by Lemurian priests and priestesses. So I love that that's in the mix for us today. And then your garden quartz, scenic quartz, lodolite, shaman dreamstone. This particular material from Brazil goes by all those names. And there's different inclusions. Some of the inclusions you'll find in lodolite are amphibole, which calls the angels in, kaolinite, which is very calming, chlorite, which is healing, actinolite, which is protective, lithium, which is relaxing, black tourmaline, which is protective, and golden rutile for transformation. And then we gave you 6 quartz points to place as you will in the outermost circles of your grid. I'm really glad I'm doing this here because I think it's much better than I would have done at home.
And I like having you here.
I like being here with you.
Good.
That was weird.
Well, that's nice.
Okay. Isn't that nice?
That's nice.
So nice. I like you too. Okay. They were good stone choices, right? I think for the exercise and the energies and kind of, and also for the colors and all of that, I think these were really, really, really good choices. Okay. So to activate a grid, I always use a double terminated quartz point. You got one with your tools at the beginning of the year, so that's your kind of multi-purpose tool. Mine is at home. I use it every single day. I used it last night in New Moon Ceremony. I love this wand so much. It's one of my favorite things I've ever given you. So I really hope you love yours too. And then at the end of the year, we're going to go through and, if you want, attach all of our cabochons that we've been collecting. So that'll be part of our graduation ceremony. Okay, so when we activate a grid, basically what you want to do is imagine, the reason we use a double term is because you want to call energy down from the universe down into the top of the point and run it through the frequency of the quartz itself, which magnifies it, and then connect it to the center generator. So you're basically creating like a tube of light or energy, and set your intention. So my intention is that this grid holds wisdom for me and for everybody here at Sage Goddess from our ancient roots. Yeah. May it be so. Now, like I said, it's less important where you start the activation. There's two things that are important. One is that you activate the whole thing and that you move clockwise. So some people say, well, you always got to get in the north or in the east or in the south or whatever. I don't think it really matters. What matters is that you do the whole thing, and that you complete the circle.
They're asking to see it from a top view, so I'm just going to sneak this. This is a glued version we already had, so we'll be... why
don't I grid with that? And then I can hold it in front of the...
Oh, like do it like
do
that?
It like this, yeah.
That could be helpful for them just because they're having
but they
trouble
don't have a generator
seeing.
glued there.
I can hold it.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That could get weird.
I think it's weird. I think you should grid with that one. They just wanted to briefly see it from the top.
So we're going to be going like this. You know what I mean? Moving clockwise. It's always stopping in the center at the generator. Does that make sense? So you're basically connecting all those crystals together, and when you do that, like I said earlier, you're actually creating the Metatron's cube. You're creating those energy lines. You're tracing it, right?
Maybe if I angle the camera a little bit.
Yeah, that might help too.
So I know it's on the bristle.
Alexis is going to hold that camera the whole time I'm gridding, so you better believe I'm going to grid as fast as I can.
No, it's okay. I might not even need to hold it. I might just, let's see,
Well, that could be good too.
Is that better? I can't.
No, not really. Well, let me. That's.
Is that any better?
Sorry, don't get seasick, anybody. It's a little bit better. Not really.
No.
No.
Okay. Then I think.
Okay.
I think let's just leave it.
We can always make a video for you too, she and I, when we're done. Just a quick 30-second, but from the top down, and put it in the Facebook group. That way you can see it.
I can actually record it while you're doing
it. Okay, cool.
it.
She's going to record it, and that way we'll post it.
And then I can post it immediately.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so we started the center generator. We've set our intention. We're going to go first. We always go out and then in. Okay, so I'm going first to the first quartz point. And when I'm activating, I always say what I'm doing. So I go from quartz, Lemurian quartz, to activate ancient wisdom, out to, and these are Lemurian points too, out to Lemurian quartz for ancient wisdom, and back to Lemurian quartz in the center, out to the next quartz point. This one is orange, so it's got that sacral energy. So calling in ancient wisdom about creativity and passion maybe, and back to Dromortierite. And then stopping here, now we're creating additional lines, right? So calling in the energies of Dromortierite, wisdom, intuition, patience, and back to Lemurian quartz. Then we go out to this quartz point here. This is more of a throat chakra. So ancient wisdom about truth, right? And communication. And out back to Lemurian quartz for our ancient wisdom, unlocking ancient codes. To Super 7 for physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental healing. And all of our ancient wisdom there, and then back to the Lemurian quartz. Out here to the indigo point, here we can call upon energies of intuition, psychic wisdom, remembering our gifts maybe from those lifetimes too, and back to quartz, back to Lemurian quartz for ancient wisdom and activation. out here to, remember we work out from out to the crown point here, which would be for faith, spiritual connection, back to Lemurian chorus for ancient wisdom, here to golden healer, activating our priest and priestess lineage from ancient Lemuria, which I love, and back to the Lemurian point here for ancient wisdom, out to heart chakra, right, with the pink point, activating our memories of love from those past lifetimes, right, and back to Lemurian chorus for activating ancient wisdom, here to Lodolite. This is calling in all of the healing and protective energies of the stone, and also calming and soothing energies of the stone, and back to Lemurian quartz. And then out here again, we always finish where we started. I consider this kind of a root chakra point, so I would say this is about remembering our connection to earth, to home, knowing that we're safe and held, and calling in those energies too for our past lifetimes. And then it's just Amen Aho, and so it is. And so what you've done is you have literally made a web of energy. You are well within the energy field of all of these crystals, and you're just connecting point to point. You really don't even have to touch them if you believe in energy fields, because as long as you're within 12 inches of these crystals, you are activating them. And now this, if you could see the energy of it, and I've had fun looking at grids on ayahuasca, and you can actually see the lines really clearly. It's a trip. If you ever get a chance to work with plant medicine, do some gridding while you're on it, because you'll be able to see the lines, and it's you can't unsee it. It's very interesting. It proves how real all of this is when you see it without the veil of your human amnesia, right? And so that is gridding, and then we took a video of that too, so we'll be able to put that in the classroom in the Facebook group for you. So if you wanted a better visual of it from like top down, we'll post that for you too. And so that is the power of gridding. Now grids, like I said, allow you to harness energy, create a vortex or portal of light, and you can start to be very intentional about incorporating sacred geometry into your grids, which is what's new about tonight's class. You can imagine, for example, this is a 1D version, of the toroidal field, this shape right here. This is you looking down on it. And so can you imagine gridding this? Little tiny stones, little chip stones. Wouldn't that be cool? Danielle, who's a member of our community, makes grids like that. I have one of her grids, and it's amazing. And she uses little tiny stones to grid these micro lines. And so she's webbing, she's creating a vortex, a web of energy, and connecting it across all these tiny lines, these energy lines. Okay, so that is gridding, Lemuria, Atlantis, shamanism in 90 minutes. The best I can do anyway, before turning it over to Rabbit Hole and Q&A. So I am now yours for anything, anywhere, anytime, question-wise, including questions about class and everything that we've just learned and done together. That's much better, isn't it? You can see me a little bit better because the light was getting kind of bright. But I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it was clear. But if you do have any questions, I'm all ears and here for it to bring you some clarity. Can I hand this over to you, Alexis?
Of course. Yeah, I'm posting the video I took in the group right now.
That's awesome.
And then once it's in the group, I will link it in the classroom as well.
Mm-hmm. Aw, thanks, you guys. Will we be getting more of the quartz wands from January? I don't think so. Sometimes when we have people carve these tools, it's almost like they get PTSD. That was really hard to have made. So I don't think so. They're huge double terms, you know what I mean? It was just kind of it was very challenging back in the day to get those done. So I don't know that we can get those back for you, unfortunately, but okay, let's talk about unity consciousness and what that looks like. Let's dive right in. Here we go. Cynthia says, Athena, my guides told me I'm a jaguar. I don't doubt it. Can you please direct me to teachers? I wish I could. It's all the best shamanic teachers, and then I'll come back to you, Kelsey, about unity consciousness. All the best. Here's the thing. most of the best teachers I've worked with, I've stumbled upon or been referred to, and they're kind of quiet about their practice. It's not like you can go to findmyshaman.com and there's like pictures and you can swipe left and swipe right. It's not that kind of a thing. What I would recommend doing is just start to poke around your local area. In the days of Meetup, you used to be able to find some pretty cool teachers on Meetup. I also recommend traveling. There are certain musicians that I follow who do these really beautiful gatherings, both in the U.S. and outside of the U.S., and a lot of times spiritual teachers are attracted to those gatherings. So people like Mose and Parangi, who actually are the composers and producers of the song that I mentioned to you on my personal page, we'll have gatherings. I think Parangi's doing, I really want to go. I'm hoping you might go, or a couple people might go. He's doing, at the end of Tucson, it's called Gems and Jams or something. He's doing an ecstatic dance.
Yes, I'm so down.
I'm going.
I saw the Gems and Jams poster the last time we were there, and I said to Brooklyn, like,
holy shit,
like, what is this? And she was like, oh,
it's Parangi.
Yes, I would love to go. That sounds fun.
I'm doing it. No, David will not go, I'm sure, and maybe most people will not go. I will 3,000% be there.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing an ecstatic dance at the end of the Tucson show with Parangi, because he's from, most of the time he's in Sedona, so it's really cool that he's going to do it and kind of incorporate the gems into it. Like, holy shit. But anyway, long story short, it's what I find is I kind of weave myself into different communities. I'm not a musician, in any kind of like super professional capacity. I'm not a producer or a recording artist. But I work with music in my ceremonies all the time, and I curate music and playlists, and so I've gotten to know a lot of these people, which has been really fun. And a lot of spiritual teachers will come to these events, and you can kind of get plugged into those communities and meet people that way. But it is kind of tricky to find shamanic teachers. What I would recommend is start doing a little bit of reading, and then look at the sources that those books will cite, and keep going down those rabbit holes too. That will lead you in some interesting directions. So unity consciousness. So it's a big umbrella term, but it's basically this idea that there is a one source, right? We all come from that source, and we're all connected and plugged into that source at all times. So one cannot be separate. Remember, I taught you in my sticker's on my wall at home, so I see it every day. Remember, I taught you about the quatrefoil and how what it symbolizes is that God is never far from me. Zoe put a sticker under it that says "Yay."
Aww.
Yeah, so it says God is never far from me. Yay! Just makes me laugh.
That's a relief.
It's cute. It's like, yay, God's with me. I don't know if she meant to do that, but it's kind of funny, and I left it. But all to say that that's this idea of unity consciousness is woven throughout almost every tradition. Again, that quatrefoil symbol, that's what that represents, is our connection to the one source, right? So unity consciousness is this concept that instead of being divided, even from each other, in all the ways that we are, by race, by gender, by geographic location, by age, by all the ways that we're separated, right? That underneath all of that, we have no separation and no division. And in fact, we're not separate from the one that created us. That level of consciousness that in shamanism is referred to the infinity. And it's interesting, in shamanism there's a distinction that I find resonant between infinity and eternity. Eternity in shamanism is still thought to be 3D. It's bound by time. It's all time, but it's still within time. Infinity is outside of time. So when I think about unity consciousness, I think about a consciousness that is not time-bound. It never began, it will never end. It takes different forms, just like you and I take different forms. This isn't the only form we've ever taken, and it's not the only form we will ever have. So when we, the importance of unity consciousness is holding that as a perspective. Because the more you feel into that and the more you live it and embody it, you begin to hold that space for other people. People who really believe in unity consciousness and infinity consciousness are a blessing to be around. I really try to surround myself with as many of those people as I can, because they tend to be optimistic, it's hard to be pessimistic if you really do believe that you're one with everything. Because what that also means is that nothing is unavailable to you. So it's a very expansive mindset. It's like, I love you, I am you, right? I'm with you, I'm not separate from you. You and I are not separate from our Creator. Anything that you want, that you can possibly imagine, is at your fingertips in infinity consciousness, right? So, but the challenge is that everything in our culture, society, world is designed to be opposed to that reality, if you really think about it. You know, I mean, down to our systems of education, right? Certain people are in regular classes, and certain people are in advanced classes, and certain people are in, I do not like the term special education, right? But it's just like, we divide people from the minute they're born, don't we? And then it's like, well, you're going to go over here, and you're going to go do this. I remember I was identified as gifted when I was in kindergarten. And the school hired a psychologist to come and follow me around, and then they took me out of my classroom and maybe go to this other classroom with other kids from other schools, and I didn't know. And I just started screaming and crying. I was just like, no, like, I don't want this. I don't want to be smart. If that's what smart means, I don't want this, right? But they were like, oh, you're going to do these special exercises. Like, we immediately start trying to put people in boxes and compartments from the minute they're born. So if you believe in infinity consciousness and you see the benefits of it, that's great. Society will be against you every step of the way because it's threatening to society. Because society capitalizes on our differences to keep us at odds with each other, right? To limit our capacity for expansion and growth and evolution of consciousness. That was a long-ass answer to your question, darling. But, you know, you asked. Let's see. Let me go back up in the feed. But it leads us in these interesting directions, right? You're welcome to recommend teachers, for sure. And I would just say, if somebody recommends a teacher in this class, it's not my recommendation. So if you go and you don't have a good experience, please don't come back to me and go, Athena, I found about this teacher in your classroom. I cannot attest to the skill or the gifts of anybody, but if you guys want to recommend and take each other's recommendations, you know, I think that's a beautiful thing. I do. Let's see. Just gonna fly. Let's see. How long do you leave a grid up, and what happens when you take it down, like the Diwali grid from last night? That's going to be up to you. Some grids are like perpetual grids. My abundance and prosperity grid at home, it's been up since I lived in San Diego, which is 12, almost 13 years ago. And I just dust it, and sometimes I reactivate it, but I haven't taken anything out. And it, you know, and it's fun to look at, but it's very old. I mean, it's like crystals that I've had for a long, long time. Your Diwali grid, you may only want to leave up until tonight or tomorrow night, and you may want to take it down. You know, it's up to you. Lakshmi only comes around for the 48 hours, right? So once Lakshmi's had her way with you, maybe you don't want to keep that grid up. So I always say use your intuition, and then you're going to deactivate it by doing exactly what I did tonight, but counterclockwise. And again, just making sure the only two important things are that you deactivate the whole thing and that you follow the same lines that you started with. And if you don't remember, just do your best, right? This isn't a test that you're going to get an A or a B on. Just do your best. Let's see. Thank you. Yeah, we're having these shells made for you soon. Everybody's excited about it. They get all twisted around, but they're supposed to be kind of off the shoulder like that. It's cute, right? So they're coming. We used to have these shawls in the shop, and then the manufacturer stopped making them, and so now we found a new manufacturer who's going to make them just for us. So we're excited about that. What if your Lemurian generator does not have lines? It should have lines.
They should all have lines.
Yeah, so post a picture in the group, and if you need a replacement, let us know, and we'll work that out for you. It should have lines. These are all Lemurians, and they were mages for us. You're so welcome. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your comments. Pamela says, thank you, Athena. You answered my question, and I have deep clarity now. Yay! I don't know what I said that was good, but I'm so glad I did. And what's fun about classes like this one is sometimes the questions get answered as we go. You know what I mean? Because we kind of circle back on things, or we end up having these really kind of like looped conversations where everything's connected. So I'm glad if there was something you came in wanting to know and I already answered it. I think that's great. Jan said, I did that first, but my stones were in different order. I did out to quartz and back to each time. Yeah, that's okay. It doesn't have to match. The stones don't have to match. Like that's not what really matters here. It's honestly more than anything. It's not the order. It's the activation. It's the lines of energy, and the fact that you start and you finish in the same place, so that it's a container, right? Stopping where you started completes the line. And that's the foundation of sacred geometry, right? So it's about closing that loop or that container and making sure that you finish where you started. Let's see. Barbara. Oh, she's talking to Joanne. Thank you, Tanya. I'm so glad you're enjoying that one too. That Herkimer ring was really, really pretty. Kudos go to Bonnie for that, for working on that. Terry says, I know how to use a pendulum, but I don't understand how they work. Well, and that's one of those great mysteries, right? My theory of pendulums is that they are reading energy in the room. They're like transmitters, right? So they're reading the energies that are existing in the room. And I do think that they are guided by the spirit world. I really do. I've had some pendulums that were very, I call them noisy. Like they're ready to go, and like you pick it up and they're just so, and I've had some pendulums that are kind of like me on a Sunday at noon, kind of answering your question but taking their time, right? So it's like, and I like working with both, because sometimes the real active ones, as they have such a strong frequency, that's exciting to watch, and then sometimes when it's a little bit slower, it's still accurate. So yeah, it's just they're just picking up on resonant frequencies in the field. Elsie says, speaking of our ancestors having more refined psychic gifts, do you think that before electricity we could sense energy easier? Yes. What other modern things get in the way? Everything.
It's noise.
This little shit box right here.
Shit box.
Not these two, human, cat, and Zoe's off to the side here. This picture is not. She's in there too, but I'm not talking. They're not the shit box. This is the box is the shit box.
The box is the shit.
Yeah, I think it has disrupted so much, but then it's facilitated so much too, right? I mean, we have to both appreciate technology. This was the conundrum of Atlantis. And it's totally relevant to everything we talked about tonight. The benefit of technology is technology. The downside of technology is this is nothing but a rectangular shaped distraction in our energy field, and it has its own energy field. I have started to shut my phone completely off, which I never did before. Mm-hmm. But I feel better. Mm-hmm. It's like you're off, like you're time out, not just in another room, but like OFF, right? But it's hard when you're like me, or if you are like me and this is your job. Like I can do everything I need to do for Sage Goddess from here in a pinch, right? That's a blessing and a challenge. But then there are times where I remember spending so much time with my grandmother when I was young in her mobile home, watching the 3 or 4 channels that she had on her very old television, and she would watch like Maury Povich, and what else did we watch? Price is Right, Maury Povich, like Days of Our Lives, I think we used to watch. I'm trying to remember. And I think about it now and I'm like, how did she not just go insane? You know what I mean? Like, because here I am with 80 tabs open and I'm like, what's happening on Instagram? That's boring. What's happening on Facebook? Okay, let me go into the groups. Let me I do think that we have the upside again is the connections. Like I wouldn't know some of you, right, without technology, but then the downside is we're just massively distracted. Let's see. I did enjoy it, thank you. Oh good, Melissa's getting a massage. You got the right idea. Kristen says, what happens if I don't degrid this and just put it all in a bag? I mean, you're not going to like turn into a frog. You know what I mean? It's not, there's no like massive energetic consequences for not deactivating a grid. It's just good protocol. But I mean, as with everything else, you're human and sometimes you just put it in a bag. The crystals might be a little confused. And I will say they're probably, what's interesting about crystals, because they, especially most of these are quartz or quartz based, right? Quartz remembers its mission. Quartz understands its assignment once it's been programmed and activated. So there can be a little bit like, you can try to go and use that crystal for something else and find that it doesn't hold the energy as well.
Yeah, actually everything here is quartz based.
Yeah, they're all quartz based. So
what a high vibrational grid when you're thinking about it.
No, I can feel the energy of it. Yeah. And you can do the exercise too with your pendulum.
Did I go? Okay.
Yeah, to notice the field. You want to turn that other camera on? Oh, I'll do it. You're far away from it. To sense the field, right? It's still reading it. I'm starting to feel it pulling. Yep, I'm out of the field.
I feel like the field of this grid is bigger than our own field.
It could be. It could be because there's so much quartz.
Yeah.
But you can see it start to turn there.
Well, interesting. It went out. It extended farther out that side.
It did. Then on that side, yeah. But it could be also interfering with electronics.
Oh yeah, because my laptop is.
Your laptop is here, but then my phone was there, so it's like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Fascinating though, and play with that. That's a great tip for tonight's class and the content is to play with your pendulum to sense the energy field of different things. I will dare you to do an experiment with your food. I've done it. I've done it with a piece of fruit and Cheetos. I'm not kidding. Look at the field. The field of Cheetos is like very small. The field of a orange that you've just cut in half and just picked from the tree is like expressive. It's magnetic and it's massive because it's alive, right? So, is it okay to have grids close to each other? Yeah. I wouldn't put them like right next to each other. I would at least give them their personal space, right? So I would give each grid about 2 feet around it because you know that that's the field. Now, if they're synergistic, like the intention behind them is similar or the energy of them is similar, then maybe having them connected could be interesting. And, I've told you before that there are people who grid the Tucson show, right? So they'll grid people's booths to each other and then grid the entire show to the caldera, right, which is the surrounding mountains, and there's all kinds of fun shamanic things that go on around the show. I haven't ever heard that about Denver, but I have heard it about Tucson. Denver's not as much of a vortex. God bless you, Denver, but Alexis and I are both a little bit allergic to you. Neither of us could live there, but I could live in Tucson tomorrow. I could live in Tucson for the rest of my life and be very happy. I would have a lot of air conditioning for 3 months a year, but I would be a happy damn camper. That is a super cool city, very high vibration, and it's a caldera, right? I mean, Tucson used to be a rainforest. I posted about this because I did some research into it. There are woolly mammoths, full skeletons, partially exposed in different parts of the mountains of Tucson. So it's a fascinating history geographically there. Do the wand she's using is from our January tools? Yep. Yeah, so that's a question for Karen. We'll grab you and help you there, Beverly. Let's see. Do we have any more Lemurian generators? That I don't know either.
I'm working with the team, actually. We do have some, they should be available by the end of the week. Hopefully tomorrow, but I don't want to make any promises. But we have them and they're working on it.
Yeah, so stay tuned and we'll keep you posted and let you know. This is from Michelle. If you had a severe impact at the back of your skull, would it affect your psychic abilities? Potentially. Not for sure, but potentially. Anything can. I think I told you the story. You can probably see the scar on my forehead. See it there in the light? I almost died. I was 3, 4, and completely cracked my head open. Almost bled to death. And my poor mom was like running down the street with me in her arms like this, screaming because my dad was at the restaurant, nobody was home, and like screaming for somebody to come and help her. It got me to the hospital. They had to stitch it and glue it to get it to stay shut. And I don't know whether that helped or hurt. My mom always used to joke and say that's why I was nutty or that's why I was weird, because because my head got cracked open. But it's right there on the fault line of my third eye. So let's see. This is from Alexandra. I know you said you can't talk much about the experience, but is there anything you can tell us about meeting Jesus? What did he look like? How did you feel in his presence? It's not, like I said, it's a story that I've been really guided not to share anymore. And it's interesting because I don't know why exactly, but I definitely feel like a big stop sign around sharing it more than I have. Because it was a scary experience, but it was it reinforced for me how real that energy stream is. And I would say that it was an instant feeling of just absolute divine protection, like bulletproof protection. And if I ever doubted or didn't believe that there's a Christ energy that's very real, I've never doubted it since. And I remember my grandmother saying, that I would have an experience like that when I was young. And it didn't happen until I was 33 when it happened. So, and my grandma died years before that, and I was Zoe's age when she told me that. So it took over 20 years for that experience to happen. But as soon as it happened, I knew it's what she'd been talking about. And in a way, I like having proof. I am a scientist by training, and I'm a skeptic, and so sometimes I hear things, and it's like, well, but I'd like to know for myself, and that was all the proof I needed. And I still tell people, like, you don't have to believe. Nobody has to believe. Like, you can say, well, I still don't believe Jesus is real. Good for you. I'm not here to try to convince you of anything, but I can just tell you, like, it was a revelation, and an embodied one. It was intense. Wendy said, sometimes use shaman stones. What is your experience with these? Tell me which ones you're talking about. Are you talking about like the boji stones or bojai stones, as some people call them? Is that because there's different people called shaman stones, different things. There's also something called like vortex stone from Sedona. We had it once. We've had the boji stones or the bojai stones. The reason I stopped carrying them is, if you go to Utah, they're just sitting there in the riverbed. Like they were getting really, really expensive. And the reality is, like, you're not supposed to go and harvest them, and I've never done that, but it's just people going to these riverbeds and taking these stones and reselling them on the market. So I don't know. They do have a polar charge, so they do activate this kind of like masculine, feminine energy that I find kind of interesting, but I've had more profound experiences with chumpy stones, personally. So that's why I continue to bring those to you, because I have had really profound spiritual experiences with the chumpy stones. Let's see. Yeah, cacao ceremonies are beautiful, and I love the way they do it. Most of those folks like Mose and Parangi and my friend Matya Kali, who performs with them, you're not allowed to drink alcohol while you're there because they want it to be a gentle experience, and some people can't hold their alcohol very well. So they work with cacao, which is a heart opener, and it's a pretty beautiful thing. So. Were you going to say something?
I was, yeah. I see a lot of questions about the retreat in the feed, and I'm super happy that everyone's excited about it. I'm really excited about it too, but I don't want it to monopolize the class conversation. So I'm just going to say that the email with details on how to access the link and your homepage was already sent out. If you don't see it in your inbox, please check your spam folders. Sometimes our emails go there, and then if you still don't have it, just go ahead and contact support.
Yeah, and they'll send it to you again.
And they'll help you. But I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, we're still looking forward to Saturday. It's going to be a really amazing experience. Yeah, each one of those sessions has some magic in it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
When we're talking about things that we haven't talked about before, and doing a journey, a meditation that I've never led you through before. So it's always fun, and there is something, the energy of us being together in the full day and in the space, and it's beautiful. We're excited about it. Let's see. This isn't class related. Have you decorated your house for Halloween? A few things, but I haven't done as much this year as I usually do. I will tell you, like, the holidays since my mom died have just been a little tough. I still do the thing, right? But it's I hope that will change for me at some point. I still did Christmas, the whole shebang last year and stuff, but it's hard because my mom was the decorator. You know, she was the holiday person, and she loved every holiday. You know, like Zoe's still, you know, getting dressed up for Halloween, and that was always like the number one thing she wanted to know is what the kids were going to be. And so every part of the holidays for me is just a little bit sad still this year. I know. But I also recognize life goes on. You got to do the thing. It's just been a little harder this year for me. Annette says, Athena, I would like to have my broken quartz wand repaired with gold. How do I go about this? Oh, what a great idea. Jewelers can do that for you. They can. I mean, if you want to do real gold, what we do at SG when something breaks that's really important to us is we repair it with glue and gold leaf, which costs nothing compared to solid gold. But solid gold would be a whole next level, and if you do that, I just want to see pictures. Because I've never done that before, and I've never even thought about doing that before. I think it's a brilliant idea. It will cost you, because gold is at an all-time high in terms of price. And even me with wholesale sources for fine metals, it's funny. We don't carry much gold because even the wholesale right now is almost the same price as retail. Like, nobody can really get gold at an affordable price. So, but how beautiful in that. Yeah, I see your question about the grids. I'm sure Karen will help you there too. My book is coming out in June. I don't know what the book tour is going to involve. We haven't even gotten there yet. The editors are knee-deep in the editing process. But we're really excited about it. So I will keep you posted. We've got some fun things, some fun surprises in store for you for 2023. Things that we haven't mentioned yet just because we're still locking up details and things. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of exciting things happening. So
that's right.
That's all I can say about that. As soon as I can start leaking things, I will leak them. I just can't do it yet.
I have seen someone ask a couple times. I'm so sorry, I forgot.
I'm just going in a row, but please feel free to guide me.
Someone was asking if we know if we have a special item for the end of the year. So I believe we're still doing our hexagon pendant.
Yeah, I think we are still doing the hexagon graduation pendant.
And there is some super special items coming in the December tools as well. So we
because the thing is coming, right?
Yeah, we have I don't know how much to say, but keep an eye on the December tools. We have some really, really, really special graduation items for you that I'm not sure.
That we've never done before.
Yeah, we've never done them before. I don't know if they're going to be available after the subscription, so just keep an eye on that if you want your special graduation items. And then I believe we're doing the hexagons as well.
Yeah, this is the last year of Soul Shift. The program name is changing in 2023. It has to change every couple of years. This is our 4th year of Soul Shift, I think. So it's time for a makeover and a refresh. So this will probably be the last year that we do the hexagons, but we wanted to do it one more time. A lot of you, it was your first year, and you're like, wait, I want a hexagon, so we're going to do that again. A pre-order, and you can choose silver or gold. And that will come soon. Do you believe that when you eat animals, you eat their souls? I don't know that I believe I'm eating its soul, because I do think once an animal passes and crosses, just like humans, our soul goes into that one source consciousness vortex. I do believe, and this is why I eat very little meat. I really have gotten to the point where I almost eat no red meat. And I try to minimize even poultry. I'm not really a fish person. Because I do believe that what we do consume are the hormones that those animals release, the fear hormones, right? If they are aware that they are, being slaughtered. And I have a friend who does, what's the word for it? Not like harvesting or whatever. She sells beef, but the animals they're not taken to slaughterhouses and things, and so it's a different process, and it's thought not to release all the chemicals into the meat. So that is one thing that I do. I'm conscious of that. I will say though, and I've had people who really don't like me for this, but I'm just an honest person and I don't put on a show for people. I'm never going to be a vegetarian. You know, I'm just not. But I also try to be conscious about the sources of my animal protein, and I try to be conscious as I'm eating it, you know, and try to choose it from sources that are good. It's not that I have anything against vegetarians or vegans, and I will tell you, my brother, who's a vegan chef, who absolutely is always on my case and will be for the rest of my life anytime I touch meat, if he cooked for me every day, I would never eat meat again. I mean, what that man can do with cashews and garbanzo beans is life-changing. He just doesn't cook for me every day, so he leaves me to my own devices. Okay, let's see.
Bonnie confirmed that we are doing the graduation hexagon pendants.
Aww. Tell her thank you. I'm glad that we can confirm that for them tonight. Can you teach us what to do when we are faced with dark forces? Yeah, I can. Just from my own experience, and like I said, the biggest tool in my toolkit is Jesus Christ, and it's not. And I don't say that because I'm here to convince you that that's true or accurate for you. So if you're like, well, I can't do that because X, Y, and Z, I would just say, okay, then don't do that. But it is my biggest tool in my toolkit, because what I have found is that the biggest darkness can't sustain itself in the face of that. It just is a repellent, and it's unequivocal, and it's instantaneous in my experience. If you're really faced with something very, very dark, there are dark forces in this universe. I think the best protection that we have is to try to live in that unity conscious mindset and try to operate from a vibration of love, and try to eat. I mean, I know it sounds funny, but part of your protection is what you consume, how you eat, how you live. Getting the sun and getting the light and working with nature and your spirit guides and trying to be an ethical person. One of the things I have really come to understand, especially from ayahuasca, one of the most profound teachings, I would say, from those experiences for me, is that the universe keeps track. You know, you may do something and think, oh, nobody saw that, or, you know, or even when we hurt people, especially if we hurt them consciously, and you see people hurt each other consciously all the time, when you do harm, that there is a reverberation, and it's a boomerang, and it does come back, and it doesn't come back in the original form most of the time. It doesn't even come back right away. So what I tell people is try to lead a good life, try to live as close to nature as you can, try to vibrate from a place of love, and if you get into a lot of trouble, those two words are pretty powerful when your back is against the wall, as it can be when you're, you know. I was going through my initiation at that time. I had lost my vision, and I was in kind of a vulnerable place, and it was a test to see what I would do. I like to think I passed the test. This is Kathy, how do you heal something that is ancestral lineage? Well, we did a little bit of that last week, right, with our journey. So Kathy, if you haven't done session 3 yet, I would recommend going back and doing that journey, because it was really focused on ancestral lineage. And then there are certain stones, like dioptase, for example. I also like leopard skin jasper for ancestral healing. I love celestial quartz for ancestral healing. And hydro stones are really good for ancestral healing because the water inside of them was organic to this earth before your ancestors were here, so it's got that kind of, it can track your lineage, right? So and then you know, it's part of it is contractual, right? We came here to experience certain things, and I don't have all the wisdom in the universe to tell you this is why we have contracts, this is why your contract looks like this, and this is why my contract looks like that. I do think that our contracts are also ways of working out karma, which is debt accumulated over time. And some of our karma takes us back to Atlantis, right? And so you may not even be consciously aware of what you've done, and yet there's still a responsibility to, like I said, what I know about the universe based on all my spiritual experiences is there is a really accurate and highly refined and very specific sense of checks and balances in the universe. I really do. If this universe forces you to suffer in some way, there will be a benefit to you at some point, and vice versa. With great responsibility comes, or with great power comes great responsibility. There's always a check and a balance. Will there be a drumming class? Yes, there will be in the retreat this weekend, and then sound healing is part of the 2023 program that's coming. So I wasn't sure which one you were asking about, so the answer is yes to everything. There's always going to be the sound healing won't just be drumming them. We're going to be covering every sound tool and vibrational tool next year as part of your certification as a sound healer in next year's program, which is really exciting. Can you tell us how to use the amulet you got? I had it on me during our journey last week, but how else can we use it? So wearing it, and I left mine at home, which I was really sad. We have one here, but mine is on I have a copper chain from Sylvia that I put mine on, and I'm like, I walked off and just left it. That is, whether you wear it or the other way I'm going to work with mine when I'm not wearing it is, because I put a copper chain on mine and some sari ribbon through it. So I'm going to work with it as a decor item too.
Me too. I put mine on my wall.
Did you?
Yeah. Mine. I love it. I love the design of it.
It's an amulet.
It's a little bit big for my taste. So as a necklace. So yeah. So I put it I hung it on my wall.
Yeah, and I'm sure it looks beautiful. I love big jewelry. Like I'm a really small person. I'm 5 feet tall, but I just love me a big ass 6-inch amulet. That thing is big enough. So you can use it, and those are the two ways that we have been talking about. But you may also come up with some other recommendations too. I'm so glad you guys are enjoying the class. Let's see. Oh, isn't that beautiful? I love that you got a quatrefoil necklace and earrings too when you were in Greece. How beautiful. What do you want to know more about, Mama Cole? She's like, ooh, tell me more, and then I don't know what you're talking about. Is wisdom better deep or wide? That's such a simple and yet really profound question, isn't it? Would you rather have depth or breadth? You know, one of the things I'm most interested in my personal life is this concept of mastery. As a fly flies into my face again. And I'm partly interested in mastery. I get kind of fascinated by concepts, right? It's the professor in me, probably. And I think we've lost mastery and I think part of it is what we were talking about earlier with like all the distractions, right? And people having like something like 6 or 8 careers on average in their lifetime. Like that doesn't lend itself to mastery. When you think about mastery, it's like, you know, the cobbler who like has mastered that craft and that art and then teaches his children, and then their children teach the children, right? And like passing that down through the lineage. Like I think of like my drum maker who comes from a lineage of drum makers, right? So that's mastery. Like, and that's depth, right? That may not be breadth, but that's depth. I appreciate breadth because one of the things I value in my interpersonal relationships, and this is one of the reasons why at some point I didn't want to be a professor anymore. Professors on average, or like in general, tend to only want to associate with other professors. It's like, and then their thinking becomes very insular. You know, it's like, I like knowing and talking to people from all walks of life, all ages, all educational levels, all experiences, people who don't speak the same language I do, people who grew up very differently than I did, because I feel like that enriches my life. And I don't just want to associate people with people who, like, I don't want to just associate with shaman. I like to talk to people who, you know, have totally inverse views. I mean, I have had the most interesting conversations with anarchists, right?
Yeah,
we had a great conversation with an anarchist, Alexis and I, in our
Uber.
I mean, I'm not an anarchist, and I'm not suggesting that that's a good way to live your life. I'm really not. It was a fascinating conversation. I like to talk to atheists. I do. It's like, you know, and especially if they're interested in my perspective too, it's like we can really learn from each other. So I think that true wisdom comes from recognizing that we were put on this planet with all these different folks for a reason. And it isn't so that we can just go find the people who are most like us and then build a wall. It was so that we could develop both the breadth and the depth, right? Develop mastery in our areas of expertise. I'm also one of those people who, and this could be controversial, but I don't think that you should spend your life trying to get better at things that you suck at. I think you should figure out as fast as you can what you're good at and almost never do anything else. That's mastery. But we train people like, well, you're really bad at math, so let's put you in extra math classes. And it's like, you know what? Fuck math. I'm not doing that. Nobody wants me doing math. God did not put me on this earth to do math.
That's
right?
a definite no.
But we do this thing where we're like, you know, versus playing to your strengths, right? Like, I think you should figure out, like I said, as fast as you can what you're good at and do more of it.
Hey, everybody. What are we doing today?
Class here.
What's the class?
This is session 4, and we're in the rabbit hole right now.
Oh, aren't we?
We are.
Aren't we? Hey, speaking of rabbit hole, where's the keys to your car?
Rachel may know that because she was loading all the things into my car.
Hi, everybody. I'm very Marty McFly today.
He
Hope you're
is.
doing well.
It's a cute little
It's
vest.
also very
All right.
autumnal. That's
Let
what
me
I
find
said.
It's autumnal.
That's the first thing I said to him. I was like, "You're looking autumnal."
I don't think I've heard anyone use that word at all.
I
ever.
saw it in like a TikTok. I was like, autumnal.
Well, if you think about it, there's really no other adjectival form of fall. Like you're fall-esque or
very
fallish.
autumnal.
He's autumnal. Honestly, you'll never catch me in a vest like that. Like, that's just not my jam. But he looks cute in it.
I just can't picture you. In
Oh
a
my
vest
god,
like
in a
that
vest?
I mean, and I'm not even saying I think he looks nice in it, but like I can't picture you.
Oh my god.
That kind of just
if
makes
you see me in a
giggle.
vest, like, even if I was freezing, I wouldn't put that on.
What if it was like a? Well, no, I won't bring that up no more.
No, seriously, even if, like, my nipples were about to fall off, it was so cold,
Well,
I wouldn't
was
put
gonna
that
say,
on.
what if it was like a life preserver situation?
Okay,
but
that I
know
will do, but that's
okay.
not like that's not what that is.
Yeah.
He's not preserving his life. He's just trying to stay warm.
Oh, thank you, Rochelle. I saw a question from Che Dolan, and that's why I got up, because I went to see if we have one in here. It took me a bit to figure out what she was talking about, because she was asking what the difference between the sage holder is, and I was like, what sage holder? But it's the Sagittarius one.
Yeah.
The difference is that this one, the container actually holds the sage bundle upright.
I don't think we have
really,
one here to
really
show because
cool.
I have it at home.
Yeah, I don't have one to hold, but it holds the sage bundle up, standing up, kind of like the Palo Santo burners we've had in the past. This is tight enough to hold the bundle up. It's really, really, really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
No vest for you with me.
No,
If I saw you in a vest, I'd be concerned.
no, like that's a sign of abduction.
I'd be like, what's happening? Be like, blink twice if you're okay. We actually should develop some sort of signal or something.
There should be like a still me. What happened to Mercurius Designs, Momo's jewelry? He took all his inventory back for the shows. Like literally, he came and picked it all up on his way to Denver, and has taken it back to Bali. He needed it, so Momo and I are buds, so he hasn't gone anywhere. I think he's pretty happy right now, I'm happy to report that. He's a good man. He's a good soul, you know. He really is. How long should these particular grids be up? Great question. Should we take them down occasionally, rebuild them again? I don't know that you need to take it down and rebuild it, but, you know, I would leave it up as long as you're working with the energy, you know. And again, the energy, the intention, the vibration of it is ancient wisdom coming from Lemuria and Atlantis, right? So I would say as long as you're doing that kind of work, understanding your own connection to those lineages and working with the healing energy of those stones, for example, I think it's a great one to leave up. Eternity versus infinity. It's interesting, right? Like, yeah. And that's why, and if you think about it's religions that tend to use the word eternity, like you're going to hell for eternity or whatever, and it's like, right? They don't say you're going to hell for infinity. But I think it's just a cosmology thing, because time is still very much relevant in some religious traditions, right? Let's see. I'm still kind of confused. Megan says, is it like animism? Basically, I thought shamanism equals medium, basically, and this can only be your gift if you work with the dying, newborns, and or marriage. There definitely is an animism aspect to it, right? And I'm not saying that what you understand about shamanism is wrong. That could be what you were taught. That could be what the person who taught you believed. You know what I mean? What I'm teaching tonight is my perspective on it. I've worked with about a dozen different teachers of shamanism from almost every major shamanic tradition over my life for years, extensively. So I've had a real good chance to pick their brains. And each one practices slightly differently, but there are some common threads. And I think what I tried to give you tonight, Megan, are the most common threads I can pull, right? Like, I've never met a shaman who didn't feel like connection to the natural world wasn't critical to their practice, right? Interactions with nature, time in nature. I've never met a shaman who didn't feel like that was not absolutely critical to the mission. And not all mediums, I don't think, would consider themselves shaman, right? But all shamans are probably mediums. And by medium, I'm using that word in the true Latin sense. The word medium comes from the Latin word media, which means middle, right? Which is ironic because, like, news media is supposed to mean that the media gives you a midway perspective. It doesn't really do that anymore, but that was the original intention. So I'm using the word medium in the literal Latin sense to mean you are in the middle of the worlds of the living and the dead. So I hope that helps to clarify. What happens if your cat jumps on your grid and everything moves? Cats can be such little assholes sometimes. Smudgy doesn't touch anything, but Smudgy is really lazy. I mean, if that cat moves from one dining room chair to the other, he will be in the same chair, I guarantee you, when I get home tonight, that he was in at 9:30 this morning when I left. He's not a mover and a shaker.
I feel like this is like the number one question we get for crystal grids. Every single time we talk about cats. One, it's always about cats.
Well, because they do this thing, the little shitty thing they do with their,
Felix doesn't mess with my crystals.
Yeah.
And he does do that. Like, if I put, like, a snack or something on my kitchen counter or something, sometimes he'll just whack it right off. One time I tried to put moon water in my window, and he did that.
Smacked
but
it.
with my crystals, he doesn't do it unless if I try to put, like, a crystal next to him to take a picture or something.
Oh, they hate that.
Sometimes he'll do it. But if the crystals are leaving him alone, he doesn't mess with it.
But we do know that cats do this. Yeah. We have enough evidence from the thousands of social media posts of cats being assholes with grids. In fact, that should be an Instagram account. One of you should make that. Asshole cats and grids. I think if your cat is moving your stuff around, now again, this may be controversial, glue that shit down. You know what I mean? We glue our grids all the time here. I don't feel like it interrupts the energy at all. Or use, modeling clay or Play-Doh. Modeling clay is better. Or museum putty. You know what I mean? Play-Doh dries and then it gets crispy and it flakes off. So that's only going to help you for a little while. But we use E6000 and glue that shit down. And then come on, kitty, and see what you can do. You can spend your whole day being an asshole and you're not going to move anything.
I just want you guys to know I did not mean to make fun of vests. I think
I'm not trying to make fun of vests either. It's just
Athena, for me. Like, with her style, it just doesn't fit her style. There's this
I don't like to be confined in clothing. It's just a thing for me. I cannot do it.
Exactly, but it's super cute. He looked good. If you guys wear vests, I'm sure you look great. There's this whole thing on TikTok that I'm kind of obsessed with called dressing for your essence, and it's basically about like you can try different styles and clothing and everything, but sometimes they just don't look right on you. Yeah. And so it's this whole theory about dressing for your essence instead of not dressing for your body type or but what matches your personality. And Vestas aren't that for Athena. That's why we were laughing. But there's nothing wrong with
let's talk about jeans for a second.
Yeah.
So one of my friends. And she knows me really well. She's like, Athena, I know how you feel about jeans because jeans terrify me. Jeans make me feel like my intestines are going to explode. No. That's so dramatic. I'm a Leo. Take it for what it's worth, right? I literally feel like I'm going to die when I'm in jeans. And so she was like, Athena, I've got the pair of jeans for you. Go get this particular jeans from this company. It's so great. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. I had a panic attack. And I sent them back the next day. I was just like, I can't do jeans. So that means, and I've had people say, well, what if you are going somewhere and you have to wear jeans? then that's not where I'm going. If somebody says, would you like to go to a rodeo, everybody's going to wear jeans and cowboy boots, I don't get to go to that rodeo.
I'll wear my denim shorts and cowboy boots.
I can't even do that because it's the button and the zipper.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I can't. I just can't.
Yeah.
Mama Cole can't remember her question. I feel you, darling. Aw, that's awesome, Cindy. Zilmar is asking, should we reactivate a glued grid when we move houses? I don't think so. It's not the house, it's the grid. You can pick your grid up, move it around, different spaces, different corners, whatever. I don't feel like that's an occasion for reactivating. No, so he took all of his inventory back, and it's on his website. And that's just because he needed it. So, yeah, we don't have his Momo's jewelry on our website. I am hoping, we do, if you notice, we had some wands and some chalices and things that we brought back from Denver. Do you remember that? Like 2-3 weeks ago, I think? Yeah, so we still have some of his stuff. We just don't have all of it on the website anymore.
Yeah, we'll occasionally have it in SGTVs and stuff like that.
It also became really complicated for my team to keep track of all the inventory and stuff like that. Like, our hands are full. So it's probably better for Team SG.
We have a lot of our own inventory to manage.
Let's see. Thank you, Elsie. Well, I appreciate it. And if you come up with questions, I'm here for it in the Facebook group. This isn't your only chance. So, this is just a nice opportunity for me to be live and respond. Rochelle's asking, how do you feel about sharing my sacred language with others in journey space? I feel it's sacred, and yet I know it's healing and full of light. When you feel called, I think you should. 1,000%. And that's one of your gifts, I would say, is your capacity to hold that sacred language. So my guess is you probably don't feel called to work with it with everybody, and that in itself is validation that you should work with it. Let's see. Do Maori have Lemurian roots? I would say, wouldn't you? Of what I know about Maori culture, and I've known a few Maori people with Maori lineage, they feel more Lemurian than Atlantean to me. Wouldn't you say? I mean, this is my gut reaction to your question. I think they're more Lemurian than Atlantean. But Lemuria would have been, not that far from the Australian continent. So, yeah. Listen, I'm not putting on a vest, and I'm also not putting on jeans. These things make me feel like my body's going to explode, and it's so dramatic, I know. Math is probably my South Node. My South Node's Cancer. Yeah, no, I have, my Atlantean gift is writing and language. I learn languages so fast, it terrifies people. It does. I just, if I go to a country and I don't even know the language, in a couple days I'll be able to start speaking. I'm very good with languages, and that's all past life, I know. But I definitely have Thothian lineage, but math, no me gusta math. I'm definitely allergic to math. I actually got detention when I was a freshman in high school. My kids love this story because they go to the same high school that I went to. I was kind of, I was a punk ass kid, and I was 14, and the teacher was asking if anybody had questions, and I was trying to track what he was teaching, and I was so lost, and I raised my hand. I'm like, do you think that math was invented by the devil? And he sent me to the principal's office, and I had detention for that. That was my question for him.
I feel like detention for that, unless you were already getting in trouble.
Nope, that was all I did. I just said, excuse me.
That feels
I have
excessive.
a question.
Honestly, but I said the same thing. Like, I had a really nice geometry teacher when I was in I
loved geometry.
Mm-hmm. I hated it. And to this day, like, I still have not had to use it. Like, aside from the sacred geometry.
Well, I was going to say, you are using it.
But I don't have to do, like, equations and figure out the circumference and the you know what I mean? Like, I haven't had to use it a single time.
Poor Zoe, Nick is really good at math, and Zoe is just like, she'll be like, oh, I've totally got this, and I ask her a single question about it, and like, she'll well up, it's just like,
yeah.
But you don't totally got this, though, right? I mean, anyway.
But no, I didn't like it, and I feel like I shouldn't have had to spend my time in high school doing that. And because I barely passed with a D, and at my school, that was enough to get my credit, because you needed a geometry credit so it was enough to get my credit, but it wasn't enough to go on to another math class, which was fine. But for some reason they like connected math and science. So because I couldn't go on in math, I also couldn't go on in science. So my last 2 years of school, I ended up just taking a bunch of electives, and like it just. I can go on
I did get straight A's in math in college. I did. But I had such extensive tutoring you would not believe. And I was in I didn't have any money to hire tutors, but they had a student tutoring center, and I was that weird kid that was in the student tutoring center all the time because it was free. But you could only go once a day, so I would go today, and I'd be back tomorrow, and I'd be back the next day, and I literally had them go line by line through my homework with me. Anyway.
That's nice.
How's my orange tree? No, I'm so glad you asked, and I'm sad to report that it's been replaced. I did have to, it's my friend who takes care of my garden at home, and he injured his hand really bad, so he was like, my hand's injured, and let's just work with the seaweed extract. So we did a couple applications of that. Thank you again for the recommendation. She did not come back, so... I have a new tree in her place that's actually going in this coming week. It's a donut peach tree, which is my favorite fruit other than persimmons. So I found this amazing website online where they have huge, fully grown, mature fruit trees. The prices are unbelievable. The shipping was like free or almost free. They 2 men brought it and actually physically delivered it to my garden, and so I'll show you the new peach tree when it's after my friend's hand is healed. Let's see. People keep telling you need to get better at public speaking. Why I hate it, and I don't have any intention of doing it. Yeah, if you're not going to do it, I mean, whatever, right? I love public speaking. I like, because I just want to talk all the time, and I have no fear of crowds, so I just fucking love it. But if it's not your jam, it's like, geometry, right? I'm just going up and down through the feed to see where you guys are at. Yeah. Well, that was back when Dave was there, so let me come down a little bit. Am I dressing up for Halloween? I haven't decided yet. It's part of my whole, I'm a little down thing this year. I don't know. I always say I am dressed up, I'm a goddess. That's I did get these little, at CVS, I was at CVS a couple days ago, and they had the cutest little, you know how you find those random shit in the CVS, and you know how I feel about CVS. I do walk every aisle when I go because I really enjoy it. And Zoe said they were horrible, but I think they're really cute. They're black velvet cat ears, and the inset in the ears are all little rhinestones. So I might put that on and call it a day. Zoe's dressing up as Eminem because that's one of her favorite artists. And when I asked her what that looked like, she said it looks like her wearing a beanie and a gray hoodie.
Oh, that's cute, like an orange beanie.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah. Let's see. Going down. Yeah, shamanism is earth-based. I would agree with that too. Any sapphire jewelry coming to SG for the holidays? I'm not sure off the top of my head. We do have some good jewelry coming. I'm not sure about sapphire, but I can check on that for you. Yeah, I was going to say, and I know people who are involved in those druidic, bardic courses, and there's absolutely a synergy with shamanism. That's why I'm saying, there are certain arms of Buddhism where you would say this is so resonant with shamanism. So it's not like it's not about staying in that lane. You know what I mean? You're going to find bits and pieces and aspects of shamanism in every tradition. You will for sure. And that's why I think really what we're talking about is more Atlantis and Lemuria and some of those traditions that came out of those civilizations, because how else do you explain that there's strands of this in almost every culture, right? It's like that's the only way we can really explain that. Let's see. Random question is from Karina. I've been setting in a friend of this year. Oh, good. She says the first time. My friend who's Christian says I'm preventing my loved ones from moving on. She says, I struggle to respond to this. I don't struggle to respond to this. My response is, bless your heart. Well, bless your heart. I learned that from a friend of mine who's from the South, that basically is like a really nice way of saying, I mean, come on. You know, in most traditions, not all traditions, because there are some traditions where photographs are not a good thing, right? People don't want their photographs in a house. Once there's dead people, they don't want the dead people's pictures or whatever, because they say it like holds their spirit or whatever. That has not been my experience. Yeah. In fact, I remember the first time I put a picture of my grandmother in my house, I definitely felt this wave of like gratitude. Like she was really happy. I would be so honored one day for my grandkids to have a picture of me in their house. Like, I don't know, wouldn't you? I just think that's really cool. I think it's really cool. So bless her heart for saying that to you. What a blessing of her heart. May all her wisdom come back to her, right? Good Lord. The cat is blessing your good. That's cute. Maribel says, hi Athena, when doing a shamanic clearing of dark entities, what can you do for extra protection so they don't attach to you? I open a circle, call in guides. Yeah, and we've come at this question over time from different directions, so I'll just kind of give you like the high level. One of the reasons that we like to work with double terminated tools is that by holding it, a single terminated wand is still connected to you energetically, right? Some part of that is drawing from your field. A double terminated wand held this way, right? The energy is passing through the tool, and the tool itself becomes a boundary. And then once you're done extracting, it's very important to release those energies to an element. You can release it to earth, you can release it to fire, you can release it into a flame, you can release it into sage smoke or copal smoke or Palo Santo smoke, that's air, right? Or you can release it into water. But it's really important to take that energy and release it. That's the best thing you can do. Yeah, and then the other thing is too, my shaman and I were just talking about this last week or a week before. We had a little catch-up call and we were talking about this, and so you guys might, it's kind of like eavesdropping on the conversation, but you might find it interesting. We were talking about how everybody talks about clearing and entities and stuff like that, but people don't talk about where you have to be energetically, I got stuck there, where you have to be energetically to do that work. You don't want to be clearing shit when you're sick, when you're tired. Pregnancy, in my experience, makes you vulnerable. I had some tough energetic experiences right before, during, and after my pregnancies. It's because it's a portal, right? Carrying life is a portal. I guess those are the main ones. But when your own vibration is diminished or compromised in any way, that's not the time to be doing that. Part of the protection is the strength of your own auric field. And so if your auric field is compromised in any way, just either don't do it or wait until you're in a stronger position. That would be my recommendation for you. My mom was a medium and a channel and psychic and was doing weird shit all the time, but she wasn't really clearing negative energy, but she would take soil and saliva. What else did you do, Mom? And mix it together, and she would make crosses over the doors. So it's just like different people and different. I don't know where she got that from. I think she told me one time it was a minister who taught her to do that. But it had to be soil from the location where you are and your own saliva, so it's like earth and water and bless her heart, that lovely lady. Why is Brazil associated with Lemuria? Isn't it closer to Atlantis? Well, yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, Shirley, when we were looking at the map. Do you remember that? I was like, it's kind of weird. That's why I had to make the map for you, because I'm like, it's kind of weird. Atlantis is technically closer to Brazil. But you have to remember that you and I right now are also talking about current landmass structure. It wasn't like that. 50,000 years ago, the entire structure of the continents as we know them today was very different. So it's that, and complicating that further is the fact that we find Lemurian lines on crystals that we would consider basic Atlantean territories, right? So there's all kinds of questions that get raised. First of all, is it only the Lemurians who encoded in those lines? Well, I don't think so. Okay, well then, what was close to Lemuria? And how different was the geography then compared to what it is now? We don't have what I would call accurate maps of that time. Who was going to make it? What were they going to make it with? It's conjecture based on, geology and geography as we know it today, and then kind of what we can extrapolate based on science, right? So those are all good questions. Do you think the closer we get to evolving that certain forces will fight harder to separate us? Yes. Could it be a positive sign that we're almost there making progress because they're fighting so hard? Yes. Did we come here for this? I think so. It's funny because so much of what we're talking about tonight reminds me of conversations in classes that I've taken. And I remember another one of my teachers, different teachers, saying, whatever you think this is going to look like, this ascension period, and this is like 10 years ago. So this is like pre-COVID, whatever the fuck's happening now in our world. Because I really do, I have been disheartened by, there's a meme going around that says, I would still rather be too sensitive than to be as insensitive as half the population is right now. And I kind of feel that way. I feel like we've become less sensitive. We've become cold and withdrawn, and we're not caring about each other as much, I feel like. And I feel like those kind of like the sweetness, the kindness, the generosity, the lack of judgment is starting to sound like parochial, like old times, and outdated, and like what's in is like somebody does one wrong thing and they're canceled, and like if you call someone by the wrong name or how they want to identify, like they can't talk to you, and it's like there's no bandwidth for understanding that people are human, and I don't love it. But my teacher at the time said, if you guys are thinking that this ascension process is going to be like puppies and rainbows, it's just not. Like everybody thinks like, oh, ascension, and like we're all going to be like, vibrating and like in all these Merkabas floating around. And she's like, it's mostly probably going to be like war and conflict and lack of discernment and anger and division and all of this stuff. And she's like, and then those of us who were kind of planted here to negotiate these times are going to be the ones who have to remind people, of what I told you earlier, which is the absolute check and balance system in the universe, right? So if it's all moving toward division, there has to be a collective core of us who are still holding space for integrity, right? For unity consciousness, to our discussion earlier. So I don't know. I just don't like how one and done people are. I don't think you have to give people a million chances, but we're so quick to write people off and judge them, and you're in, you're out, and I'm this, you're that. I struggle with it sometimes. It just doesn't show I don't know. Can people get better? Can they heal? Can they improve? Like, do you really believe that at your core? I do. I believe people can change. I believe they can heal. I believe people can make a mistake and still be, and actually become a better version of themselves because of the mistake. But if we just write people off and close them out and shut them down, like, how do we ever create space for that? I've become a better human over the last decade of my life. I don't know. Depends on what, this goes to core questions about your values and how you see the world, Can I talk more about orbs? You constantly see them. Yeah, so it's fascinating. If you start going down this rabbit hole, Deanna, it's such an interesting one to go down. And YouTube's kind of a fun place to look. You have to kind of sift and sort through YouTube, as per usual. Like, YouTube can either be fascinating or an absolute shit show, right? Because, like, my dog can go and start a channel about orbs. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden you're watching these videos and you're like, this isn't very smart. And it's like, yeah, who the hell did this, right? I've been seeing a lot of these channels pop up of people giving psychological advice who are not trained, and they're calling themselves like psycho coaches or like behavioral consultants, and I'm thinking like, we just have to be mindful about where our information comes from. And it's not that I don't think that people without training can't give useful advice, but got to consider the source. But there is some really interesting stuff out there in the mix about orbs, and because they've always been considered to be these signs of psychic phenomena. Some people believe orbs are actual entities or spirits, or but I think that's almost too much of a 3D interpretation. I think it's just coagulated energy that is vibrating at a slow enough rate where we can see it as humans, because we can't see anything that's too highly vibrational. We're blocked from that. And the universe communicates in symbols, right? It doesn't communicate in words, really. That's why our first languages were all symbolic, and then we overlay an alphabet and other things on top of that. But early language was always symbolic, right? So yeah, we've lost our compassion, and I don't like it. And I'm trying to raise compassionate kids in an era when that's not what's getting reinforced and rewarded, and it's really, really tough. I like that. Just Jacinta said, leave space for grace. Leave space for grace. Janine's asking a really potent question. Do you think this time Lemurian energies could win, like light workers? Yes. I do. I think the most, when you look at kind of the failed experiments, right? Lemuria and Atlantis being failed experiments. I think the failure of Lemuria may have been that nothing is ever just light, right? It's like we're talking here. Like, if we expect people to be perfect all the time, that's unfair. If you were perfect all the time, you wouldn't be here. You're actually here to make mistakes, and you're here to learn, and sometimes you have to learn through challenging experiences, right? And it doesn't make you any less of a person. And I think when we expect light workers to just be light workers, and that they don't have shadow, and they don't have vices, and they don't fail at things, and they don't, tell somebody to fuck off because they cut them off on the freeway or whatever. I just think we set people up for failure, and we set ourselves up for disappointment. So I think what we have to do is really look at it in terms of, can we experience a sense of that infinite consciousness? Can we hold space that that's possible? And then can we talk about what that actually means? So it would mean that that they're really, no matter how different I may look from you, or speak from you, or live from you, or whatever, that you and I are fundamentally the same. And can we allow that core belief to shape our behaviors and our choices and our interactions with each other? That's a game changer. You know what I mean? And that could be enough to save us, truly. But are we going to get there? I don't think so, because what difference allows people to do is feel like they're better than somebody else. That's ultimately the danger difference, right? Because if one thing is different from another, at some point we're going to attach a value to that. This is better than that, right? Blondes are better than brunettes. That's not true, by the way, but I'm just saying it's a benign example. So anytime there's difference in hierarchy, something is better than the other, and then we're going to judge it and say that that's right or wrong, or good or bad, or in or out. So the only way to get past this divisional state that we're in right now is to start to see each other as unified. But that's hard, because you have to look past a lot of things. We do look different from each other. We do come from different places. We do speak different languages. We do things differently. But we have to be able to look to the core and not to the surface, right? We have to look to the essence and not the expression. And that's a tall order for folks, especially if they've never been. Especially, first of all, if they don't see the value in that, or if they're one of those people that's like, well, that's just the way it's always been. Okay, Joanne, but it hasn't always been great. You know what I mean? Like, it could be better. Bless your heart, right? Unity and diversity. We're different and we're the same. Mermaid Crystal put it beautifully, right? I can be different from you. It doesn't mean I'm better than you. And there's also a humility in recognizing, like, okay, so I might be better at certain things than you are. I guarantee you're better at certain things than I am. So then the question becomes, can we figure out what I'm good at and what you're good at, and put all this together and maximize what we can do together, versus saying, just attaching to, well, I'm better than that, or I'm better than her, or I'm better than him, or I'm better than them, or whatever. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool, Kim. She has pictures of orbs where they've followed her in all the picture frames. That's really cool. There are some just bad actors out there. I really do believe it's true. And I will tell you, there's a theory about like dragon energy, and that it's the dragon energy is disruptive energy, and it's here to disrupt paradigms, and it's here just for the purpose of creating disruption and chaos. And there's a whole arm of energy work and magical work called chaos magic, and the idea is to keep things in a frenzy, and to keep things, keep energies in motion, and people who practice those traditions would disagree with what I'm saying right now. They would say, no, the key to everything is disruption, and to to play out difference, and to create structure and hierarchy, and I would say, that's just not my perspective, and we can agree to disagree. But there definitely are people out there who are just, what therapists call bad actors, right? No judgment around that. It's just, it is what it is. And your gifts of discernment will show you who those people are. And the nice thing about human beings is they reveal themselves over time. You just have to wait. Right? Nobody can keep up a facade forever. So eventually people will reveal themselves, and then you'll have your information. And then what you choose to do with that information is your choice. I do find people too are pretty honest about who they are when you listen to them. And most people know who they are. And they will tell you. The question is, are we filtering it out because we want to believe someone is something, and then we're not hearing the other side. So yeah, and you can use certain things for certain things, right? Like Elsie's saying, I use chaos magic for sigils. So maybe it's part of your practice, but it's not the totality of your practice, or it may shape your philosophy, it may not shape your philosophy of like life, or interactions or relationships or any of that, right? Is it bad if we drink too much alkaline water? I think anything in excess is bad. But that's just how I've always been taught. Little bits of anything are not going to hurt you, right? One of my favorite sayings is that every medicine can heal or kill you. And it's true. You take one Advil, it might help your headache. You take, 5 bottles of Advil, and we'll be seeing you in the hospital later, right? I mean, it's dosage. The difference between a cure and a killer is dosage. So I always say, if you love something, I'm not a fan of cutting anything out, because at least for me, like if I tell myself I can never have chocolate cake again, all I will do and think about is chocolate cake. I'll dream about it. I'll see it on Instagram. I will drool about it. Mm-hmm. But I can't eat a whole chocolate cake, right? And at my age and my height, I can barely have like 2 or 3 bites without gaining weight, right? But I will have a little bit every now and then, little by little. Yeah, that's really cool. Rochelle said her Egypt trip was with all Scandinavians. Communication was more energetic than word-based, right? My most profound energetic experiences have not had any speaking. And I'm talking about romantic experiences. You've had profound romantic sexual experiences, right? Was there a whole bunch of talking going on? Probably not. Maybe a little, but not much, right? Being in the room with healers who don't speak the same language, there's no words necessary for a lot of interactions. When you're working with plant medicine, most of the time there's someone singing, but and most of the time it's an Icaro, where if you don't speak Spanish or understand Quechua, you can't tell what the lyrics are saying, right? So it's like you're not there for the language, you're there for the energy. It's profound. I'm happy for you, Janine. She said she got a glimpse of hope today with this new job. She said she had to do diversity training, and they talked about commonality, and it felt good. I think it's important, and I think there's real value in accepting people for who they are and not consistently trying to change them. That's one of my core beliefs and values. I really don't want to be in the business of trying to change people or convince them of anything, or I just don't. I don't think that's my job. And it may be because I grew up in a Christian home where I love my grandma and my mom were amazing women. They truly were. If you weren't Christian, they were going to tell you about how you were going to go to hell. I mean, it was just going to come up at some point, and it was always awkward for me. I don't want to be the person who's going to tell you have to do this or that. Even as a parent, I mean, it's a line for me. Because I really do believe in human sovereignty. I mean, with my kids, I try to raise them well and keep them safe, but even so, I don't try to tell them, if you don't do this, then you're going to be that. I just think that's not accurate, you know? Yeah, like cannabis, right? Too much cannabis, you won't ever be able to get off the couch. Just a little bit, right? Get you creative and kind of open, right? So, yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, Cheryl Cole said, correlation versus competition to build the collective. Yeah, like work together, right? It is hard. And I think if people feel like there's only one way to do things, that's almost like defeating you out the gate, isn't it? Like, there's only one way to do this, there's only one way to be this, there's only one way to get to heaven, there's only one way to... It's just like, that has never resonated with me. But my moon's in Sagittarius, which means I'm on a quest for truth. And that doesn't feel true to me. So if something doesn't feel true to me, I just don't stop there. I just keep pushing until I find something that feels truthful. Yeah. Well, dragons are not always chaos and all of that. I didn't mean to suggest that they are, because I do think that there's a lineage of dragon medicine that is beautiful and protective and magical and all the things. But there are some traditions that talk about a dragon people and that they are disruptors. I don't have any proof of that, and I don't even know if I believe it, but I just put it out there for your consideration. Let's see. Yeah, it's tough, Valerie, and it's tough not to get discouraged, you know, with all the division that's out there. And I do feel like we are on a trajectory where there'll be more of that before there'll be less of that. I mean, the fact that we can become so divided as a people over a virus and a vaccine, I mean, what? There's, you know, I understand things as a human being, like I really do, but then my soul still goes, what? Like, people stop talking to each other because of that stuff. Like, it just, it's over my head, kind of, right? So I think we have to hold steady, because I think we're here for this part of the ride. And yeah. Christina said, what stones would you recommend to help with pregnancy? I'm only laughing just because pregnancy is so fucking hard. All aspects of it. Even if you have a swimmingly amazing one, it's still challenging. They do talk about, they being, you know, most crystal healers talk about malachite for delivery. I think it's great to set up a grid for pregnancy, you know, and everything for growth. When I was pregnant with Nick, and he didn't seem to be growing at the appropriate rate. He's just fine. He's like 5'9" and 220 pounds, so he turned out great. But I mean, guy's like a weightlifter. But anyway, he wasn't growing fast enough, so I did like an aventurine grid for growth. What else did I put on there? Guys, I mean, this is like 16 years ago now, almost 17 years ago. But anyway, you know, choosing stones for whatever it is that might be going on. You know, if you're having, I had horrible morning sickness with both my kids for months. That was a nightmare. I didn't work with stones for that necessarily. Looking back, I could have done some solar plexus work for that. I just ate ginger all the time, and crackers, because that's the only thing that helped. Can I give a definition? I know we're at time, so I'll just answer one or two more. Can you give a definition of collective consciousness that's easy to understand? That's a great question. From my perspective, the collective consciousness is not just my thoughts or your thoughts, but it is the amalgam, the entire collection of thoughts and thought patterns of the whole. So collective consciousness changes over time because generations change, people are born and people die. There's new developments and new technologies that shape how we see the world and how we communicate with each other. So the collective consciousness is just kind of the, you know, it's what we call transpersonal, right? It isn't you and it isn't me. It's the totality of everyone and how they are approaching their consciousness and their evolution. That's about as simple as I can put it. Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much, you guys. I really hope that you enjoyed class tonight. It sounds like you did. And if you have additional questions, you're like, oh, I should have asked that, just take it to the Facebook group. That's what it's there for, and we would love to see you there. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So I will be with you on Saturday for the Of Light and Shadow retreat. So I hope you're looking forward to that. We are looking forward to that. That is a full day adventure. We can't wait. And then, like I said, if you missed the new moon ceremony last night, you can always go back and watch that on YouTube. You'd want to do that before the end of the night tonight, probably. It should be still in the window. And then enjoy coming out of this eclipse period, although remember that it'll be bookended by a total lunar eclipse at the upcoming full moon on November 8th. So we're not out of the eclipse period yet, so all the rules still hold and apply. Don't lie, don't keep secrets, don't be naughty. The universe is telling all right now, so don't get caught off guard by that. It's always my public service announcement. But then after the 8th, you can go be as naughty as you want. I'm just kidding. But we're really glad that you were here with us tonight. So thank you to you, Karen. Thank you to you, Alexis. Everybody worked really hard on tonight's class. We're glad you loved it.
It's beautiful.
And thank you for coming with me to Brazil and enjoying all the magic that incredible country has to offer. We are really excited to go to Indonesia next and to Bali. Might be able to wrangle my Momo into a live. I've been thinking about asking him if he would go live with some Bali-ness.
Ooh,
wouldn't that be kind of fun? Just a little bonus something. Can't guarantee it, but I'm overdue for a catch-up with him anyway, so we shall see, darling. Have a great rest of your evening, you guys. Take good care, and we will see you soon. Have fun. Have
Good night, everyone.